Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Marvel, Kryptonian, Man of Steel and Travel Across the Dimension. Chapter 21. The news that Emperor Company had begun recruiting spread quickly, and all the major headhunting companies immediately started sending people to contact Black Widow and Michelle. Although the world is not without phones or computers, compared to phone calls and emails, it is definitely more sincere to come to your door in person. If it were other companies, even Morgan and the like, they wouldn't have to do this, but Emperor Company was different. Everyone can see its unstoppable development. Both blind people and fools know that it will definitely become the new Big Mac. So if we don't establish a good relationship now, when will we wait? What a headhunting company can do is its relationships and contact channels with major Fortune 500 companies. If it can tie up with the King Company, the headhunting company will definitely get more resources and talents. Different from talent exchange centers, headhunting companies adopt active competition methods of covert hunting and quick attacks to hunt for high-level talents that are not available in the company's talent market for customers who need high-level talents. The prey of headhunting companies are senior management talents. Generally speaking, it is mainly recommended to recommend the president, vice president, general manager, deputy general manager, personnel director, personnel manager, financial manager, marketing director, marketing manager, product manager, technical director, technical manager, factory director, production manager, department managers, senior project managers, senior engineers, postdoctoral fellows, Ph.D.s, senior business management talents, other senior consultants and other talents above the manager level, etc. The services of the Talent Exchange Center are blue-collar talents, basic affairs talents, and micro-regional talents. The former is to pick whatever customers want, and the latter is to sit back and wait for whatever comes. The most well-known headhunting firm even offered commissions to give discounts. They just wanted Luther's chance to have dinner together. Luther was a little confused. If it was other capitalists or Buffett who wanted to meet him for dinner, it would be normal. Why would a headhunting company do this? It wasn't until he saw the other party that he realized that this headhunting company was just trying to make connections. Yes, Luther will definitely agree. He is experiencing life now. So he wouldn't refuse, and it was strange that the headhunting company wanted to have dinner with him, otherwise Luther wouldn't come. This restaurant is only open to private members. Many people want to come in, but they can only be invited. We do not accept orders from people who are not qualified, no matter how rich they are. The man opposite looked like a handsome gentleman. Luther thought he looked familiar and must be the same character. I just don't know what the character is, and Superbrain can't cope with it for the time being. Who told him to mainly read comics and movies, and he only knows about TV series from Marvel. It sounds interesting, but I'm not very interested. Luther sat down bored and said, "First meeting. Young imperial ruler. He has white hair, wears glasses, and looks to be in his 40s or 50s. Who is Sir?" Luther planned to start with the name first, if the other party did not disguise his name. "Daniel Whitehall." He smiled slightly and then said, "Oh, got it." Luther immediately searched the name from the Superbrain. Hydra. It's not surprising that Hydra would come to your door. Luther's superhuman medicine and human enhancement technology are epic-making anyway. Luther is even called the father of new humanity, although only a few newspapers and magazines have said so, but the momentum has become stronger and stronger. No matter what the thoughts of the several heads of Hydra are, the goal of world domination will not change, and Captain America is the best living advertisement for the influence of super soldiers. Before Iron Man appeared, Captain America was known as a super soldier and superhuman. Not counting the big pie face, few people know about the big pie face. After seeing the performance of Captain America, Hydra, major organizations and countries have conducted endless research on super soldiers. Supervillains and superheroes of all kinds also appeared because of super soldier experiments. But now, with the emergence of Luther, a mature super soldier human body enhancement technology, Hydra has been able to endure it so far. It is already very good. His original name was Werner Reinhardt, the leader of Hydra, a great scientist and obelisk researcher who was obsessed with the study of ability enhancers. After being arrested by Agent Carter in 1945, he has been imprisoned in the secret SHIELD base, Rat Hole. In 1989, at the behest of Alexander Pierce, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Actually a Hydra undercover agent, the elderly Reinhardt was released on medical parole. Reinhardt returned to the Hydra base in Austria, where he was surprised to find that Jiang, who was imprisoned here, had not aged in decades. In order to explore Jiang's secret, he began to conduct experiments on her. During the operation, he disassembled Jiang's body and organs, and finally used Jiang's DNA to return his body to its middle-aged state. Jiang died during the operation, and her body was discarded by Reinhardt's men. The following year, he returned to Hydra under the new identity of Dr. Daniel Whitehall and became one of Hydra's important leaders in the new era. Oh, first meeting. Luther looked at Daniel Whitehall with interest. He was also a master of hypnosis and brainwashing. Agent number 33 of S.H.I.E.L.D. was hypnotized and brainwashed by him. Daniel then said that he was the top leader of a large scientific research institution and wanted to reach some cooperation with Luther. This surprised Luther. He originally thought that Daniel was going to do something to him, such as controlling him and brainwashing him to get human enhancement technology or something. But looking at Daniel's appearance, it seems that he is testing his character. Luther has seen similar questions and guidance in hypnosis and psychology. Professional agents may not be able to react, but they are powerless in front of Luther. Luther even had the leisure time to analyze why Daniel did this while dealing with it. Want to win him over to join Hydra. Hydra has enough snake heads. America alone has 2 snake heads. It should be impossible. So, is he going to take him in as a subordinate? I can only say that this is too daring. Even if Luther wants to play, he will be the snakehead of Hydra. Whitehall, who was politely declined by Luther, did not look very good. Sir, do you want to do it? The right-hand man next to him asked. Yeah, Whitehall said calmly. He is so rich, yet he doesn't even hire a bodyguard, but drives out by himself. Does he really think New York is safe? Whitehall's right-hand man, who was responsible for the action, sneered. Since he refused to serve Lord Whitehall, let him know what the real world is. Luther drove the car carelessly. New York was also very lively at night, but where he was now, he could clearly see an increase in police patrols because the taxes here were very sufficient. America is a place where the strength of the local police force depends on the amount of local taxes, because the police are supported by taxes. Coming. The corners of Luther's mouth rose. Then I saw 2 black Chevrolet 7-seater SUVs ramming into the car and intercepting Luther one after another. This kind of Hollywood blockbuster scene made many passers-by exclaim. I wonder if it was an unannounced movie being filmed, or was it a real street battle? The police patrolling nearby quickly put their hands on the holsters on their waists and called for backup with the other hand and explained the situation. Immediately afterwards they saw a group of masked armed thugs holding automatic rifles or submachine guns and shotguns used to break down doors getting out of 2 Chevrolets. These armed thugs even wore heavy-duty body armor, and you could tell at a glance that they were not someone to be trifled with. Since a certain AK gangster wearing heavy body armor had a gun battle with the police for several hours, killing and injuring dozens or hundreds of police officers, body armor has been included in the category of prohibited sales. You can buy guns, but not bulletproof clothes. Of course, nowadays, you can actually buy body armor, but you absolutely cannot buy this kind of heavy body armor with full bulletproof inserts. Being able to get it all shows that they have a background. For a moment, the patrol officers frantically searched for bunkers and called for support. Get out of the car, Mr. Luther. A thug came to Luther with a shotgun and deliberately loaded it. It doesn't matter if your car is bulletproof, we have enough explosives. Luther nodded slightly when he heard this, opened the car door and walked out. Immediately it attracted everyone's attention, and they also wanted to know who the person who caused such a big scene was. As a result, someone quickly recognized him. It was Luther. The boss of the Imperial Company, the ruler of the young business empire. Passers-by excitedly took out their mobile phones to take photos, while the police officers' minds were buzzing. Why are you such a big shot? No, why are you so low-key and don't bring hundreds of bodyguards with you when you go out? They know about the cooperation between Imperial Company and the police department, and Luther is already a capitalist recognized by America's upper management. He may be a little worse than Congress and Wall Street gents, but if he is kidnapped here, then they all don't have to do it. The policemen gritted their teeth and their eyes were red. Fight with your life to ensure that Luther is not taken away. Then the group of armed thugs suddenly threw several projectiles at the crowd. Grenade. Lie down. Their goal is to cause chaos, so those aren't grenades, they're shock bombs. Passers-by were also running around like crazy. They had seen the power of grenades from various Hollywood blockbusters, and of course they would not stand still stupidly. However, Luther seemed unfazed, which made these hydras very unhappy, so one of the hydras reached out to Luther, preparing to push him to the ground and tie him up. Bang! It was like the sound of a baseball hitting a baseball bat violently, but amplified several times, allowing those who were not knocked down by the shock bomb to subconsciously hear and defend themselves. Then he saw Luther maintaining his punching posture. In the direction of his punch, there was a human-shaped dent that dented an innocent car. Inside the sunken pit was one of the armed thugs, but his hands and feet were now twisted, and his chest had collapsed to a terrifying depth. No one who saw it would think he was still alive. You, how is that possible? The hydras were shocked. They clearly saw Luther's actions, and that's why they found it incredible. Why, do you think it's weird? Luther smiled and disappeared instantly, and then the hydras quickly raised their guns and turned to each other's blind spots. It has to be said that this kind of tactical movements and changes are really the so-called Navy SEALs in the movies who panic and lose their tactical formation when they attack east and west. Then one of the hydras saw Luther. The situation was now very clear. Luther also used human body enhancement technology on himself. No wonder he was so bold to come out alone without bodyguards, but even the human body enhancement technology was not enough. Bulletproof. So he fired directly, aiming at non-lethal parts of course. Bang! After a gunshot, he saw Luther stretching out a hand at some point. His palm was clenched tightly, as if he was holding something, and heat was rising from his palm. There was no scream or dodge, but Luther stood intact and safe. Thinking of the significance of Luther's current actions, this hydra's brain is about to explode. Impossible, absolutely impossible to have such a ridiculous thing. Even the enemy of Hydra, Captain America, can't take the damage of a pistol. Thermal weapons are too lethal to flesh and blood. There is no flesh and blood that can ignore bullets. Even a steel body will be dented when hit. Give it back to you. As if guessing what he was thinking, Luther spread his palm, and a flattened bullet appeared in his sight, and then Luther threw the bullet lightly like a child throwing something. The next moment, one of the legs of the Hydra completely left his body and turned into minced meat. Ah! This pain that had never been experienced before made the Hydra howl in a flash, and fear surged in his heart. Oh, I used too much force, sorry. Luther apologized with a smile. The other Hydras had turned around when the other side fired, but they couldn't understand the facts they saw. But Luther was too lazy to continue playing with them. He instantly appeared in front of a man, punched him through the body, and then pulled out his arm. The Hydra next to him was immediately stimulated when he saw his teammate being killed. He didn't care about capturing him alive and fired at Luther crazily. With the bio-force field, Luther's arms were not stained with blood. Facing the violent storm of bullets, Luther stood still and let them attack him. His clothes and face were not damaged by bullets. They didn't come to their senses until everyone had emptied their magazines. It's over. You no longer have lethal force. A light flashed in Luther's palm. This one is called a howitzer. Qigong bullet. A Qigong bullet comparable to a howitzer hit the group of Hydras. Suddenly, there was a loud bang. They were blown to pieces, their bodies were shattered, and their flesh and blood were splattered everywhere, but it was impossible to find a complete body. Luther patted the non-existent dust on his expensive suit. With the bio-force field, Luther could keep his hair straight even in the center of a nuclear bomb explosion, not to mention the rain of bullets. After the incident, the New York Police Department acted quickly. There was no way they would not act quickly. Luther was attacked on their territory. If they didn't act quickly, he was afraid that the military and his own senior officials would tear him apart. In fact, in just 10 minutes, the phone of the New York City Police Department's chief's office and his own mobile phone were blown up. The police chief, who was scolded, had the idea of committing suicide by shooting himself, because he might not be able to keep his current position and might even go to jail. This is New York, and the incident happened near the wealthy area. As a result, a group of armed thugs tried to kidnap a capitalist with a very powerful status and capital. The stun grenades they threw also caused injuries to people on the scene and caused chaos. There were also many people trampled and injured. There were also black people who took the opportunity to buy for free in the chaos. The capitalists were very angry, and the Wall Street masters were even more furious. They were in their own country, on their own territory, but capitalists were attacked. What about them? Will they also encounter such a situation? All the capitalists were excited, and the energy that burst out was beyond imagination. They were afraid that such a thing would happen to them, so they had to prevent it from happening. Anyway, such a big responsibility cannot be borne by a police chief, and it is estimated that many people will have to take the blame. But after they understood the situation at the scene, everyone focused on Luther. Automatic rifles could not break through the defense, and even Luther was not repelled by close-range direct shooting. Even if it is possible that the handmade suit Luther wore was a bulletproof suit, the effect was also very good, but there was surveillance at the scene. They clearly saw that the bullets hit Luther's face and hands, and the places not covered by the suit were still intact. The close-range energy explosion made them even more excited. After the traces and analysis of the energy destruction at the scene, the destructive power of this energy is equivalent to that of a 105 mm howitzer. What? It's so powerful. The gentlemen were very excited. Isn't this equivalent to a humanoid self-propelled howitzer? The most important thing is that this is an energy attack, and it is an energy attack of living organisms. They have only seen it in various science fiction movies. The closest energy attack to humans is only laser weapons. This is incredible. How can biological energy be comparable to thermal energy? Where does he get such a huge amount of energy? The researchers were puzzled and could not imagine how far Luther's human body enhancement technology had reached. This energy attack alone was far ahead of modern biology by many years. How did Luther solve this problem? Unless he has a cold nuclear fusion reactor from Stark Industries in his body. He looks like he can continue to use this energy attack. This is crazy. If you want to deal with him, you can only send out an army. If automatic rifles cannot cause damage, machine guns may be able to deal with him. But he has been in the streets in New York all the time. We have no chance to deal with him. Those heavy weapons you mentioned are impossible to use. Although most of the scene was destroyed, they still found some of the warheads. The trajectory of the refracted warheads sometimes exceeds expectations. For example, there was a warhead that was fired more than 5 times and flew hundreds of meters away. So there were quite a few bullets that were not destroyed. After analysis, they came to the conclusion that Luther really ignored the attack of the bullets from the automatic rifle with his flesh and blood at close range. You should know that the close-range strafing of the automatic rifle can even penetrate a standard steel plate with a thickness of 2 centimeters, not to mention the metal fatigue. He allowed the opponent to attack until the magazine was empty without breaking the defense, which shows that the automatic rifle is not Luther's limit. It is very likely that even machine guns cannot break the defense unless armor-piercing bullets or full-power bullets are used. Sniper rifles may also be able to break the defense, but the problem is that Luther can catch the bullet with his hands. He has supersonic nerve reflex speed, which includes his reaction speed and body movement speed. The weird thing is that even if Luther performed such a supersonic action, there was no sonic boom. But he did move his hand after the bullet was fired, but it was so fast that the monitoring could not capture it at all, as if the frame was skipped, and he raised his hand and caught the bullet in an instant. Apart from anything else, the sonic boom caused by the speed of the bullet, which exceeds the speed of a supersonic bullet, is enough to blow these armed thugs away. Half a day after the incident, Emperor Company received many calls for visit appointments, and the masters couldn't sit still. They didn't expect that Emperor Company had such good things. No wonder Luther didn't bring bodyguards when he went out. With such power, does the bodyguard protect himself, or does he protect the bodyguard? Such good things can't be owned by Luther alone. They also want it. Isn't it just money? The masters are not short of money. For the masters who are afraid of death, what Luther showed is what they want. Luther showed his strength through Hydra and had expected such a thing to happen, but he didn't care about the pressure and desire exerted by these masters. If he had the ability, he would drive a tank into Emperor Company to steal his human body enhancement technology. Iron Man can keep his iron suit, let alone Luther. For others who want to buy such products, Luther asked Michelle to reply that it is the cutting-edge technology of Emperor Company, and has not yet solved the problem of mass production, so there is no idea of selling it. The masters definitely don't believe such rhetoric, but they have no choice. Whitehall didn't expect Luther to have such power. All the men he sent out died, and they also attracted the attention of S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. has been paying close attention to Luther recently, and Nick Fury's attitude towards Luther has gradually changed. He feels that Luther may not be able to become a member of his plan. After all, he is a genius like Tony. So naturally there will be S.H.I.E.L.D. agents staring at Luther. Of course, these S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are all Hydra people, and their staring is equivalent to making Hydra act at will. If it succeeded, everyone would be happy, but now that it failed, Alexander Pierce called. "What are you doing? Who gave you the power to mobilize my agents?" Pierce angrily scolded Whitehall. "Don't get excited, Pierce." Whitehall was already very annoyed, but he still held back and said, "You asked me not to get excited. Do you know what you did? You actually attacked Luther." Nick Fury has been paying attention to Luther recently. Pierce became even more furious after hearing this. If this exposed Hydra, what would happen to his plan? It is true that he was not unaware of this matter, and even had a tacit attitude of approval, but now that the matter has failed, of course he will hold Whitehall accountable. This matter will not be discovered, and your Hydra will not be exposed. The identities of my men are all mercenaries. The most Nick Fury can find out is that they were hired to kidnap Luther. Whitehall naturally knew that Pierce must have known about it, otherwise he would not have been able to ask S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Hydra to assist. That was Pierce's territory. But this kind of thing is that you know and I know everything, but it's impossible to figure it out. Then, why should I help you? Pierce crossed his legs and said, "Don't forget, Reinhardt, you owe me one more time. You're not helping me, you're also helping yourself." Whitehall knew what Pierce wanted, but he couldn't hand it over. Pierce was not Baron Strucker. There was still the possibility of cooperation between him and Baron Strucker. Everyone was studying and capturing Inhumans. It's just that Whitehall is definitely not as good as Baron Strucker's research and collection of Inhumans. "Are you threatening me?" Pierce laughed. "No, don't get me wrong, Pierce." Whitehall said, "Have you provoked Luther and seen his power? Do you think he will let you go next?" Pierce said disdainfully, even he was shocked by Luther's power, and he didn't know if the supergun on the Insight battleship of the Insight project could kill Luther. Otherwise, it would be very troublesome for him to let a superhuman like Luther survive. Whitehall stopped talking. He was also regretting his rash action. Although Luther had no evidence to prove that he did it, Whitehall thought from his perspective. He didn't think he would let such a suspected person go and would rather kill him. Don't let go of mistakes. So he had already moved his position after the incident. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Pierce, don't you think it would be nice to bring him into Hydra? Whitehall said immediately. Pull in Hydra. Pierce's eyes widened. He had never thought about this kind of operation. Whitehall's thoughts seemed to have opened a door for him. Is Hydra attractive to him? He is not America, nor is he from the Allies. Does he have any hatred for Hydra? Whitehall said, Hydra is certainly a well-known villain organization, but that is for a country like America. Judging from Luther's performance, we know that he has no interest or idea in becoming an American. In this case, why not try to let him join Hydra, even if he becomes the new leader of Hydra, that is, the snakehead one of them is fine. Pierce hesitated, wavered. What if he doesn't want to? Hydra will be exposed. Pierce asked. Exposed as exposed. Whitehall said nonchalantly. What's the meaning? Pierce frowned. His plan had reached a critical moment. If Hydra was exposed, how could it continue? We can't handle Luther alone. It doesn't matter if Hydra is exposed. We can send people to lurk beside him and cooperate with him in another way. Whitehall continued. You mean, swallow. Pierce got it. Yes, it exposed that we can throw a target for your people to investigate, and if there is a way to control Luther, what will happen to Hydra? Whitehall said calmly. Human body enhancement technology. Mass-produced super soldiers. Pierce paused for a moment. In fact, he didn't care about this very much, but what he wanted was stability, so that his plan could be carried out stably. In this way, he could directly rule the world by then. Nick Fury frowned as he watched the video, which showed footage of Luther fighting the armed thugs again and again. How could something like this happen? Nick Fury felt a headache. He didn't expect Luthor to make a big news for him. Not to mention anything else, in terms of the strength Luthor showed, he was completely like a controllable Hulk in human form. Hulk had been born at this time, and S.H.I.E.L.D. naturally knew of Hulk's existence. If it weren't for Hulk being uncontrollable, they would have sent people to contact him long ago. The invulnerable and powerful Hulk made America, a country with a strong military strength, helpless. Although Luthor could not match the Hulk, his identity and position made him even more troublesome. He contacted the Black Widow, but the Black Widow, who was busy day and night, obviously didn't know what happened. Michelle naturally knew it immediately, but she had no obligation to tell the Black Widow. So after knowing this, Black Widow was confused. What the hell, my boss is a Superman who is invulnerable and can fire a howitzer at will. After watching the video, Black Widow looked confused. How's the Imperial Company investigation going? Nick Fury cares more about this. Quote, It's only one day. Black Widow said helplessly that even if she was a super agent, it would be impossible for her to find what she wanted in one day. You have to come back as soon as possible. If there is no problem, then you can come back first. Nick Fury feels something is wrong with this kidnapping, but he doesn't know what is wrong, so he needs Black Widow to investigate. Michelle was busy after the incident, especially since the Imperial Company suddenly had so many visiting appointments, and behind them were all big shots who couldn't afford to offend. Luthor refused them all willfully, but she definitely couldn't speak out. That's inappropriate and will offend people. After finishing the work, Michelle had time to find Luthor. Boss, are you injured? Michelle's first concern was Luthor's body. Even though the outside world had turned Luthor into a body of steel and invulnerable, those were bullets and thermal weapons that allowed humans to dominate the Earth's food chain for so many years. The most powerful weapon. The concept of thermal weapons is not so easy to break. Of course it's okay, Luthor said with a smile. Has our company's technology developed to this level? Michelle, as an ordinary person, naturally does not know that there are mutants in the world. S.H.I.E.L.D. has good control over mutants, and they have all been contained by Hydra. To the outside world, mutants threaten social security. Nick Fury then killed all these mutants. So in Michelle or in the public eye, Luthor is the first true Superman. Even Michelle felt as if she was facing some dangerous creature when facing him. This is her psychological effect. Luthor has no aura. Unexpectedly, after recovering his feelings, today's murder did not leave Luthor with any special feeling. Cutting-edge technology often exceeds your imagination, especially the cutting-edge technology in the national laboratories of big countries like America. But if the problem of mass production is not solved, it will just stay at the concept of cutting-edge technology. Luthor nodded and then said, Understood. Michelle extracted the keywords, that is, this technology cannot be mass-produced for the time being, and there is only Luthor. Moreover, this is not just a transformation technology. It is the combination of many human body enhancement technologies to achieve the current effect. Luthor continued. Michelle understood. In other words, Luthor's strength could not be achieved by just human enhancement technology. He had to go through many human enhancement transformations to reach his current level. However, I'm afraid this can't stop those big shots. Even if it takes tens of billions of dollars to transform technology and consumption, there are still more people who can afford it. Michelle is worried that Luthor will not be able to withstand the pressure. Only Luthor didn't take it seriously. He made whoever oppressed him disappear. It was such a simple thing. This was the benefit of having power. Therefore, in the eyes of the outside world, Emperor Company will definitely recruit someone ruthless no matter what, even if he has a great background. Otherwise, Hydra would not think they had a chance to let Luthor join Hydra and become one of the snakeheads. They felt that they would wait until Luthor could no longer bear the pressure before contacting him. How is the company doing now? Luthor asked Michelle that he already knew these things from Megatron, but he still wanted Michelle to report it again to see if Michelle had missed anything. Natalie has completed the recruitment for most positions. The positions that are still lacking are senior positions, which need to be decided by boss. She has already sent the information to boss's computer. Michelle answered. Luthor turned on the computer, and there was information sent by Black Widow in the mailbox. It could be seen that Black Widow really worked hard and completed so much work in just one day, which was very efficient. Others may need several days to analyze and study, but Luther didn't need it. He finished browsing it in 1 minute, and then Megatron opened a more detailed page. In less than 10 minutes, Luther already knew everyone in the information. The feeling of a super brain strategizing fascinated Luther. Sean, Red, Termere, let these people stay, they are suitable. Seeing Luther selecting candidates and arranging positions in less than a moment, Michelle was a little doubtful. The positions of these senior executives are very important. They are not middle and low-level positions. Even if something happens, they will be able to do it. Deal with it promptly. Boss, do you want to continue researching? Michelle said tactfully. No, Emperor Company doesn't raise waste. If it doesn't work, just replace it. Luther said calmly that now they are the ones begging to come to the Imperial Company, not that the Imperial Company cannot run without these people, so Luther can fire whoever he wants. By the way, Emperor Company wants to expand its asset scale and acquire some suitable companies in the fields of entertainment, computers, and games. Companies in the military industry can also be acquired, provided that their industries are large enough. Luther continued. Yes, boss. Michelle didn't find it strange. This was something any company would do. Expanding its scale and influence, providing a large number of jobs, is also tantamount to kidnapping the people who hold these jobs. Neither the country nor the town government will and dare not easily let such a large enterprise have problems. That would be equivalent to facing a series of problems. A massive wave of unemployment. Even America, a notoriously heartless capital country, cannot withstand such an impact because it will affect their support rate. This is what the chaebols of the small country do, and the consortiums of the small life also follow suit. Of course, it is mainly because America took the lead and did a good job that they learned this model. At the same time, the acquisition of industries can also accelerate the Emperor Company. Now the Emperor Company is mainly that the head has flown hundreds of kilometers away, and the legs have just started, and are still running at a snail's pace. If the industry is not acquired, it will take at least 10 years to catch up with the current position of the head, and by then the head is probably out of the earth. Of course, the acquisition of industries also has to face a problem, that is, the problem of mismatch between the head, body and feet. If handled well, this problem can be solved in a few years at most. If not handled well, no matter how much acceleration is now, it will take several times longer to catch up in the future. But Luther will naturally not let this happen, otherwise his superbrain will not be wasted. After temporarily handling things and deciding the next step of the Emperor Company, Luther finally has time to busy himself with the matter of crossing again. Cross. Luther crosses again. Then he found that the passage was about the same size as when he returned to the Marvel world from Dragon Ball, and there was no change. This confirmed his previous conjecture, that is, the size of the passage was related to his strength, and had nothing to do with the level of the world. The channel became larger again, because his strength had become stronger during this period. However, Luther was still crushed to pieces. After falling to the ground, the Doomsday Gene quickly restored Luther's body and reshaped it at a speed visible to the naked eye. Doomsday's cells are full of energy again. No, it is releasing stronger energy. Luther felt that the cells in his body that were originally consumed by the time travel were full of energy again, and doubled than before. The reappearing Luther took a look around and knew that he was still on Brawley's planet. The electronic clock in the laboratory shows that a month has passed. It's different from Marvel. The flow of time is not opposite. Luther was thoughtful. It only took 1 second to go back to Marvel from Dragon Ball, but it took a month to go from Marvel to Dragon Ball. This is still a month on Brawley's planet, and I don't know how long it has been on Dragon Ball's Earth. I didn't return to Earth, so let's try my guess. Luther felt that his ability to travel should not only be used to travel through the world. So he began to try to use the ability of travel to return to Dragon Ball's Earth. The super brain analyzed, and the super senses observed the changes in itself in detail. Then Luther's whole body was seen shining with golden light. The next moment, his whole body was particled and disappeared. The passage was so wide that it seemed that the whole Earth could be stuffed in. Luther easily passed through the passage and reappeared in the laboratory of the Universal Capsule Company. He half knelt on the ground, and only consumed a tiny part of his energy to cross such a long distance. Standing up again, Luther found that there was no one in the laboratory. He thought about it and left the laboratory without contacting the people of the Universal Capsule Company. It turns out that a year has passed on Earth. After figuring out the current time, Luther took out the Dragon Ball radar as soon as possible. No matter what time it is, of course, he would first master the 7 Dragon Balls. Then Luther found that several of the 7 Dragon Balls were staying together, and it was obvious that someone was collecting Dragon Balls. He flew over and found that it was someone he didn't know, so he took the Dragon Balls away at super speed without alarming them. The remaining Dragon Balls were in an unmanned corner and were taken by Luther. Last time, because he was focused on Brawly, Luther ignored many good things in Dragon Ball, such as teleportation, the transformation technique of the Southern Transformation Kindergarten, and the superpower of stopping time by stopping breathing in the Ginyu Force in the Dragon Ball world. The magic in Dragon Ball is also very interesting, such as the magic of Majin Buu that can turn people into various foods and clay. Luther got the Dragon Ball in order to go directly to Namek. He wanted to get the more powerful Namek Dragon Ball to make a wish. 3 wishes, even if they can only work on one person, are much more powerful. If you learn all the superpowers and magic in the Dragon Ball world through the Namek Dragon Ball, it will be a big improvement. However, Luther put the Dragon Ball into the Universal Capsule first. He plans to go to the Southern Transformation Kindergarten to learn the transformation technique first. From the fact that the Southern Transformation Kindergarten recruits students, it can be seen that their transformation technique can be learned. However, the audience and readers only see Oolong and Pool. Maybe there are many people who can transform in places that cannot be seen. Luther obtained information about the entire Earth through super hearing. After the super brain analyzed it, Luther knew the location of the Southern Transformation Kindergarten. Then he appeared above the Southern Transformation Kindergarten and took classes with the children who were learning the transformation technique. With Luther's super brain, he learned the transformation technique in less than a few minutes. Transform. Luther tried to transform, and then he turned into a huge robot 50 meters tall. The complete transformation technique can have the characteristics of transformation. Wulong's incomplete transformation, after turning into a missile, can exceed Sun Wukong's somersault cloud. But I am too strong, so the characteristics of the transformation are affected by myself. Think about it, how destructive is a 50-meter tall Kryptonian? For a complete transformation technique, the transformation time depends on the consumption of physical and mental strength, and there is no limit to the number of transformations. If the physical and mental strength are sufficient, you can transform whenever you want, and it is no problem to transform multiple times in 1 second. For Luther, who has the physique of Doomsday plus Kryptonian, he can have as much physical and mental strength as he wants. Well, next is the Red Ribbon Army. Last time, Luther was too busy to find Dr. Grow. This time, it was different. He had enough time to make the entire Red Ribbon Army his own. An evil army that aims to conquer the world. The entire army is divided into several units, each of which is commanded and managed by a cadre and operates under the command of the commander-in-chief. The troops often threaten local residents to do physical labor in the jurisdiction area. With abundant funds and powerful military weapons, it is known as the most evil army in the world. The Red Ribbon Corps headquarters is surrounded by dense forests in the west of the Earth, with a total area comparable to a small town. It is equipped with weapons such as cannons and machine guns. Intruders will be attacked by bullets and missiles when approaching from the air. Internal movement is carried out by elevators. However, these are non-existent things for Luther. There are intruders. What? How many intruders are there? Only me. Luther rushed into the communication room and said with a smile. He had removed all the obstacles outside in less than a second. If he exerted his super speed, he would not be hit by those attacks at all. The world seemed to be stagnant in his eyes. So why was Superman hit by Batman with kryptonite? If it is because of his deep love for Batman, then why can the villain hit Superman with kryptonite? Black Marshal, right, you have 1 minute to surrender. Forget it, it's too long, so I'd better kill you directly. Luther said to the communicator, then felt bored and threw the communicator in his hand in one direction. The communicator wrapped in air was like an indestructible shell, penetrating all kinds of iron plates, concrete and human tissues, and finally smashed the Black Marshal to death. From the discovery of Luther, the intruder, to now, in less than a minute, the Red Ribbon Army headquarters was killed by Luther, and finally the adjutant of the Black Marshal, Black Blake, surrendered with his men. Wait, we are willing to surrender. Before Blake finished speaking, his head was evaporated. I hate Mo, but I can accept the surrender of others. Luther said calmly. The people of the Red Ribbon Army dared not say anything, so they naturally bowed their heads obediently. Luther asked them to call Dr. Grow over. With him watching, Dr. Grow couldn't run away, but Luther planned to hypnotize Dr. Grow with great strength. There was no way. This was a real genius, black technology to the extreme, especially the technology of the infinite energy furnace. The output was at the level of exploding planets. According to the combat power of 10,000, King Vegeta easily blew up several planets with a wave of his cloak. The infinite energy furnace that is comparable to Super Saiyan or even stronger is likely to explode the solar system directly. How could such a black technology talent be let go? Dr. Grow was brought to Luther without resistance, mainly because he saw the process of Luther slaughtering the Red Ribbon Army. Even his specially made camera robot could not capture Luther's moving speed. What's more strange is that this moving speed did not cause any sonic boom. Otherwise, the shock wave alone would be enough to raise the entire Red Ribbon Army headquarters to the ground. Drive Grow, nice to meet you. Luther smiled at Dr. Grow. What do you want to do, rule the world? Dr. Grow asked Luther seriously. He didn't have much moral bottom line. He would avenge the Red Ribbon Army later only because Sun Wukong and others destroyed his research support. Ruling the world, I'm not very interested. What I need more is your artificial human technology. Luther shook his head. Artificial man. Dr. Gero's artificial man at this time was still inclined to the combination of technological weapons and human bodies, but after seeing Luther, Dr. Gero seemed to have burst into inspiration and came up with various new directions for artificial man transformation. Artificial man as powerful as me, Luther said with a smile. I understand. Dr. Gero accepted Luther's rule, but Luther was still worried, so he hypnotized Dr. Gero in the end. However, because there are too many uncertain superpowers and magic in the Dragon Ball world, Luther is not sure how long this hypnosis can control. Therefore, he will not commit suicide to give Broly's genes to Dr. Gero for research. On the contrary, technology must be mastered in his own hands. Luther plans to wait for Dr. Gero to point out the technology of the infinite energy furnace, and then he will learn it himself, and then he will not be afraid of Dr. Gero's betrayal. Artificial man technology is still very promising, so Luther must learn, master, and have the ability to innovate. The Red Ribbon Army Corps changed its development route in a short period of time, and the generals of various squadrons outside were called back. They are all the best artificial man materials. Except for Cell, none of Dr. Gero's androids were created from scratch. They were all modified from human materials. Number 18 and number 17 were modified from a pair of siblings captured by Dr. Gero. Luther gave Dr. Gero the Saiyan genes of Sun Wukong that he got while collecting Dragon Balls. If he had the best android materials, he would definitely use them. Would he have to wait for Dr. Gero to slowly point out android number 16 with genes from the Earth? Then began a long period of study and research. All the squadron generals who ran back were controlled, and Luther used all the people of the Red Ribbon Army as materials for modification to speed up Dr. Gero's research progress. Anyway, they were not good people, so it was best to be consumables. Finally, after most of the consumables turned into various androids, and a large part of them died due to failed modification, Dr. Gero successfully developed the infinite energy furnace and the modification technology that he called super androids. In Luther's opinion, androids 18 and 17 still have some shortcomings, that is, there are still mechanical structures in their bodies, such as this infinite energy furnace, which is the most typical example. Luther doesn't like machines, or rather, he doesn't like the mechanical structure in his body. He likes the romance of boys. Of course, he likes steel and mechas, but he can't let go of mechanical structures plus flesh and blood. He likes Zerg, the pinnacle of flesh and blood evolution. He likes machines like Transformers, but they can't be mixed together. It feels too awkward, so he studies this point himself. It would be great if the technology of the infinite energy furnace could be transformed into a biological type. Luther is in a bit of a dilemma. Even Luther can't transform the technology of the infinite energy furnace, mainly because it's too black technology. However, Luther has already learned Dr. Gero's super android technology. The infinite energy furnace is the reason why number 17 and number 18 are so powerful. Number 16 is even more powerful than the Super Saiyan. It is speculated that it is very likely that the infinite energy furnace has also been transformed. But it is still not as powerful as the Super Saiyan 2. It can be said that at this point, Dr. Gero is no longer valuable to Luther. However, Luther mercifully spared Dr. Gero's life and only let the modified android monitor Dr. Gero's every move. Dr. Gero's wife is a genius in the new game, but she only appeared after being transformed by Dr. Gero. Now, she is dead. And Android 21 was created by Dr. Gero using his wife. Not sure if it is his wife, but it is definitely the mother of the prototype of Android 16 as the fusion material, plus the cells of Cell and Majin Buu. By the way, something like Majin Buu actually has cells. As for Dr. Gero's grandson, Dr. Hyde in the future movie version, he has not been born yet. Next, we will go to Namek. Luther couldn't wait any longer. So he summoned the dragon directly. Speak, tell me your wish, no matter what it is, but you can only make one. The familiar dragon appeared from the dark clouds that were about to destroy the city, and then looked at everyone below and said. The people of the Red Ribbon Army had long been transformed into androids who obeyed Luther's orders, and even Dr. Gero couldn't control them, so naturally they would not mess around at this time. I want to go to Namek, the hometown of God. Luther was worried that the name of Namek had too many overlaps, so he added a key. This wish is very simple and has been fulfilled, Shenlong said, and then Luther felt the familiar traction again, and then he followed the traction without resistance. Below, Shenlong disappeared, and when the 7 Dragon Balls were about to disperse, the 7 androids jumped up and grabbed a Dragon Ball from each other. With the power of the 7 Dragon Balls being intercepted by the young Son Goku, it is known that their power is not strong. Luther was too lazy to collect the Dragon Balls after he came back, so he let his androids intercept all the Dragon Balls directly. This will make it convenient for him to make a wish directly when he comes back next time. Luther slept soundly under the effect of traction, and he felt quite comfortable. But this time it was unexpectedly fast. It seems that in the original plot, Son Goku also arrived at Namek very quickly by taking a spaceship. Shenlong is faster than the spaceship anyway. If Luther did not have the coordinates, he would have flown here or crossed over. As this Namek, Luther landed on the ground. There was no difference in the surrounding environment, but he still walked forward. He released his aura. The Great Elder of this period was still alive. He would probably be able to sense him soon, right? Luther had no ill intentions and would not kill innocent people indiscriminately. His aura was naturally not evil, but such a strong aura would naturally attract the attention of the Great Elder. Not long after walking, Luther's aura sensed a strong aura that seemed to cover the sky and the sun approaching him quickly. As this Nairu, 42,000 combat power. Luther felt a sense of oppression. He had never known how strong he was before. Now that he felt Nehru's strong aura that covered the sky and the sun, he knew that he probably didn't have 10,000 combat power. Who are you? A tall Namekian appeared in front of Luther, and then spoke the Namekian language that Luther could not understand. I, Luther. Luther pointed at himself and said the pronunciation of Luther. Nairu paused. Nay, but Nay, who didn't know how to communicate, finally took Luther back, because the Great Elder said he wanted to see Luther, otherwise, Nay would most likely get rid of Luther or expel him from Namek. Of course, Luther was not afraid of Nay. Just kidding, a Kryptonian from Doomsday, what's the point of being afraid of him? Even if Frieza was here, Luther would dare to go up. Anyway, Frieza would not use his full strength at the beginning. He hasn't tried his growth speed and adaptability yet. Following Nay, Luther met the Great Elder. Hello, outsider. The Great Elder didn't speak, and the voice automatically sounded in Luther's heart. Luther knew that the Great Elder had the superpower of telepathy, so it was not surprising. Hello, Great Elder of Namek. Luther replied. What is the purpose of your coming to Namek? The Great Elder asked directly. For the Dragon Balls, and for the Great Elder to help me develop my potential. Luther said. The way to develop the potential of the 7 Dragon Balls is nothing more than the Super Divine Water to stimulate the potential, the Namek Elder to stimulate the potential, and the old Kai King God sealed in the Kai King Sword to stimulate the potential. The latter stimulates the most potential and has the strongest effect. I see. The Namek Elder was a little surprised by Luther's directness, but he didn't feel Luther's malice and decided to satisfy Luther's purpose. Come here, kid, the Namek Elder said. Luther obediently walked in front of the Namek Elder. It was the first time he saw such a tall, intelligent creature, especially when he knew that the other party was an alien. That made him even more curious and full of shock. The Elder's hand pressed on Luther's head. I feel that you have terrible potential. The Elder said even more unexpectedly. He could only activate part of this unprecedented huge potential. Really, Luther didn't think it was a big deal. The potential of Doomsday was not scary, but incredible. Especially since he hadn't used evolution once. If he had evolved, the potential would probably be even greater, right? But Luther's personality is to plan before acting, and he would rather attack by surprise than head-on. He turned Doomsday into a life-saving resurrection armor. Then the Great Elder began to stimulate Luther's potential. Luther felt as if something was caught in his body, just like a fish biting a hook, but the difference was that this fish was as big as a coon, and the Great Elder's hook almost broke. When he finally succeeded in catching it, the Great Elder felt as if he was going to die. The difference was that Luther felt that his whole body was bursting with power, and the power surged out from his limbs. Ah! Luther's breath instantly suppressed and covered Neru's breath, making Neru show a fearful expression, and then blocked in front of the Great Elder. What is my current combat power? Luther didn't know the answer. His breath completely suppressed Neru, but the combat power gap was 1.5 times, which was a complete crushing in the Dragon Ball world, so his current combat power was at least 60,000 or more. Then Luther used the bio-force field to completely restrain his energy, and even the combat power detector probably couldn't detect Luther's combat power. After all, when the combat power detector was used to detect the future Trunks, the combat power was also very low. Thank you, Great Elder. I owe Namek a favor. If there is any crisis in the future, you can send someone to Earth to find me. My name is Luther. I know, Luther. The Great Elder smiled and nodded, and then he asked Nelu to ask the elders of each village to send the dragon beads over. Great Elder. Nairu glanced at Luther and said uneasily. Before, he felt that he could crush Luther to death at any time, but now, he felt that Luther could crush him to death at will, so he was very worried about the safety of the Great Elder. Don't worry, Naru, if he had really bad intentions, he could do it now. The Great Elder said. Nelu was still not reassured, but finally went to inform the other elders. I suggest you, Great Elder, create more fighting Namekians. I have a special ability and can see the future. In the future, Namek will be destroyed at the hands of the Universe Emperor Frieza. Luther thought for a while and finally told the information. Really, Luther, you are such a good boy. When the Great Elder heard this, he was thoughtful, and then said to Luther with a smile. Luther also had his own little thoughts. The Namekians were really outrageous. In the original plot, Piccolo, a weak scumbag with less than 10,000 combat power, merged with Naru, a Namek with 42,000 combat power, and became a 1.1 million combat power. I don't know how many times this has been multiplied, but what follows is even more outrageous. Piccolo can crush the cyborg that even a Super Saiyan can't beat after assimilating it with a god, completely destroying Cell's first form. The assimilation of 3 combat-type Namekians can reach this level. If the Great Elder listens to Luther and creates more combat-type Namekians, Frieza will probably have to face a warrior with a combat power of 1 billion Super Namekians. I know that the Namekians have the ability to assimilate the surge in strength, and Frieza is powerful beyond imagination. Even after merging Naru with a fighting Namekian, he is no match. I think the best thing is to be able to create more assimilate the fighting Namekians to deal with Frieza. Luther had already told it, so he simply continued to tell the Great Elder more information. The Great Elder didn't speak, thinking about whether Luther could be trusted, but even Namekians knew that they could assimilate each other and become stronger, so it seemed that Luther's words were trustworthy. The Great Elder was even more shaken by a powerful enemy that neither Naru nor a fighting Namekian could deal with. By the time Naru brought the Dragon Balls back, the Great Elder had already made a decision. He wanted to create more fighting Namekians. He also knows about the Universe Emperor Frieza, and there is also a Frieza Legion, so more fighting Namekians are needed to protect the Namekians. Little Luther, Tell me your wish. The Great Elder asked Naru to summon the Namekian dragon Palunga, and then said to Luther. Luther was unable to learn the Namekian language through telepathic communication in a short period of time, and could only make wishes through the Great Elder and Naru. He also knew that this was a restriction imposed on him by the Great Elder. My first wish is to get the superpower in the universe. Luther's first wish made the Elder's eyes widen, mainly because he had never seen such a daring wish. Little Luther, are you sure you want this wish? The Great Elder couldn't help but ask. Yes, Great Elder. Luther nodded. So Naru told Palunga what Luther wanted. The next moment, Palunga answered. I'm sorry, this wish is beyond my ability. Please make other wishes. Naru translated and told Luther. Then let me learn all the magic in the universe. I'm sorry, this wish is beyond my ability. Please make other wishes. Give me a spiritual tree seed, the kind that can be planted, not dead. After Luther was rejected again, he suddenly made an unrelated wish. Nelu was stunned, but he repeated Luther's wish. This time Palunga did not refuse. Along with the light, a seed fell into Luther's hand. What is this and why did he wish for this? Nelu and the Great Elder were very curious about this question, but obviously Luther would not tell them. The spirit tree is also called the spirit tree. This fruit was originally food that only gods could eat. After the tree takes root, it will absorb all the nutrients from the earth and bear fruit, but the land on this planet will turn into a barren desert. After hundreds of years, not even a single blade of grass will grow on the land. Dales was able to open up the Kaio fist 10 times after eating one, and Sun Wukong had a fighting power of 30,000, which shows how deep the potential of this thing is. However, Luther does not think that there is no upper limit for the fruits of the spiritual tree and can be infinitely strengthened. Just kidding, if he was really that powerful, Dales wouldn't have had so little fighting power before he met Sun Wukong and the others. The most reasonable conjecture is that the Earth's vitality is stronger than imagined, and the fruits of the spiritual trees that absorb this vitality are stronger than those on other planets, which is why Dales and the others have become so terrifyingly strong. In other words, the quality and quantity of the planet's vitality determine the quality of the fruit of the spiritual tree. And since it is food eaten by gods, the upper limit is probably the level of a god, but I don't know whether it is a Kaioshin or a great Kaioshin. After all, when Kaioshin first came out in the original plot, Piccolo exclaimed that he was invincible and surrendered directly. The fighting ability is definitely much stronger than that of Dales. But it doesn't matter. Luther thinks he can study purification, extraction and synthesis to make better strengthening potions. Maybe he can also study it with super divine water, Marvel's heart-shaped grass and other good things from other worlds. Carefully putting the seed into a capsule, Luther began to think about what he wanted. The remaining 2 wishes can't be wasted. I want learning materials on magic in the entire universe, including the demon world and the god world. Naru is numb. Does he feel that Luther's wish is okay? However, can he really learn the magic encyclopedia of the entire universe? Your wish has been fulfilled. Originally, Luther thought that this wish might not be realized. Unexpectedly, Palunga was so powerful that he directly instilled the magic knowledge of the entire universe into him. Ordinary people probably died of brain overload. But Luther completely absorbed it and began to browse it. Then he found the magic used by Majin Buu, which might be from the Kai King god he swallowed. Transformation magic. It can also be called transformation, which can turn living things into anything you want. After all, Majin Buu can turn people into clay, so obviously anything can be transformed. Very comprehensive magic, including the magic that Luther wanted to control others. The magic system of Dragon Ball is really huge. Luther looked at the vast sea of magic knowledge. Even if he had a super brain, he didn't know when he could learn it all. The enhanced memory and thinking speed of the super brain could not help him learn and use these magics quickly. The third wish, I want to be able to learn superpowers in the universe. Luther said to the elder. Superpowers can also be learned. In addition to the superpowers that are innate and race-born, for example, the teleportation that Sun Wukong learned as a kind of superpower. It's just that teleportation can only move with the chi of living things, which is not as convenient as the king of the Kai who can teleport to any place in the universe at will. And I don't know if this teleportation of the king of the Kai is their privilege or the superpower learned from the god realm. So Luther plans to try it. This time, the Namekian dragon did not meet Luther's wish because it was beyond its ability. What do you mean? Magic can be learned, but superpowers can't. Luther was puzzled and had to slowly lower the standard. He felt that the superpower in Dragon Ball that moved him the most was the superpower in the Ginyu Force that could stop time by holding his breath. If it weren't for the fact that Guta's combat power was too low, he could be the captain of the Ginyu Force with this superpower. If this was given to Luther, relying on the super breath that all Kryptonians have, he could hold his breath for an unknown period of time, which would be an infinite stop of time for him. It shouldn't be possible for me to get such a bug superpower, right? Luther himself was a little skeptical. Until the Namekian dragon fulfilled his wish, Luther reacted. No, I really got it. Luther's pupils shrank. He had thought that if he failed again, he could only wish for the genes of the frozen demon or other rare genes to create artificial humans, but it turned out to be successful. Then Luther felt carefully and realized that he was tricked by the animation again. Guta's superpower is to stop time instantly, but it cannot stop time for a longer time, because stopping time will consume its own energy. The animation is set to stop time as long as the breath is held. He got the ability of the comic version of Guta, which can stop time instantly, but it will consume his own energy. The longer the stop time, the greater the energy consumed. This consumption is not gradually increasing, but increasing exponentially. If stopping time for 1 second requires 1 unit of energy, 2 seconds is 10 units of energy, and 3 seconds is 100 units of energy. Even if he has infinite physical strength and energy brought by the Sun and Doomsday genes, it is estimated that he can't stop too much time at once. The advantage is that he only needs to slow down to stop time again. It can be regarded as a superpower to stop time continuously. More importantly, with the strength of Doomsday's Kryptonian, who can withstand his crazy output for 2 or 3 seconds. In addition, Luther also got a superpower that is more convenient than travel through time, that is, teleportation. Imagine a place in your heart and you can move there instantly. It all depends on the strength of your own mental power and mental power to determine the distance of teleportation. Similar to the abilities of mutants Nightcrawler and Red Devil. In addition to not being able to travel through the world, in Luther's opinion, this superpower is more convenient than travel through time. Next, Luther did not return to Earth immediately, but learned the Namek language on Namek, which was considered to be prepared. After all, when the original plot began, the Great Elder was about to die of old age. The key to maintaining the existence of the Namek Dragon Ball was the Great Elder, and then the other dragons. At that time, new dragons would be selected to have new Namek Dragon Balls. With the learning ability of Kryptonians, Luther was able to talk fluently with Naru in less than a few minutes, and Naru was a little surprised by Luther's learning ability. Finally, Luther returned to the Earth of Dragon Ball with part of Naru's body tissue. With teleportation, it will be much more convenient to travel in the future, and I can go back to visit Brawly. If Luther lacks the legendary Super Saiyan gene, he will go back to pull Brawly's tail. Anyway, with his speed, Brawly will not be able to find it at all unless he stimulates his potential and grows up, and he can't resist. I don't know what Brawly will think when he knows about this in the future. Speaking of which, I'm short of a thug. If I kill Brawly's father secretly now and then adopt Brawly as my older brother, can Brawly obey me? Luther thought about the scene of himself facing Frieza's army in the future. Behind him stood Brawly, the top thug who became stronger and stronger, and then there was the artificial human army that was a mixture of Saiyans, Namekians and Earthlings genes. I guess he can kill Frieza without even doing anything, right? I'm so tempted, but it's not that easy to control Brawly. Luther was thoughtful. It's hard to say anything else. Brawly seemed to have been spoiled by his old father, but he was actually a very filial child. It's just that his father was afraid of his power and trained him as a tool for him to return to planet Vegeta and become the king of Saiyans. Compared with the old version of Brawly, the new version of Brawly is fundamentally kind and can be friends with monsters after all. Luther is worried about this. Is he a good person? Strictly speaking, Luther felt that he could not be regarded as a good person. He only acted and thought in line with the standards of a good person, based on the 3 views of normal people and the ideological education he received in his previous life. I am not so indulgent that I can do whatever I want as a native of my motherland. In essence, Luther would not kill innocent people indiscriminately if there was no benefit, but if there was no benefit, he would still kill bad guys indiscriminately. This was a pursuit of psychological and moral satisfaction, and the bad guys would have to die. So if there was a conflict with Brawley one day, Brawley might resist him. Let me think about it. Spiritual magic. Luther is still more inclined to control Brawley. Of course, forget about Babetti's evil of controlling other people's hearts. Besides, if he controls Brawley, he won't have to worry about Brawley encountering magic and superpowers that can control him in the future, right? It's decided. First create the androids, and then go collect Brawley. Luther returned to Earth. Now the Red Satin Army has officially changed its name to the Emperor Organization, and is powerful. However, all artificial humans absolutely obey Luther's orders, so they are only entrenched in one place and do not rule the world. Chapter 31. The potential of Saiyan plus Earthling hybrids is very high, so Luther added their genes when researching androids. The genes of Namekians are no exception, and the regeneration ability alone is enough. Relying on this regeneration ability, after being reborn from the brink of death, Cell can become a complete body again without absorbing number 18, and even became Lightning Cell comparable to Super Saiyan 2. Luther is looking forward to whether his androids will become stronger and stronger. After all, the setting that Saiyans become stronger after being on the verge of death and recovering is really amazing. Of course, there is another setting or pit filling later. That is, everyone's potential is limited, and you can't rely on this infinite card bug. Otherwise, you will be several times stronger after recovering from the brink of death. Who can beat you? In terms of the design of the android, Luther thought about it and didn't design it to look like Cell, retaining the appearance of humans. He will take these experimental data and the genes of Saiyans and Namekians cultivated back to the Marvel world for reproduction. Successful, from now on, you will be Android No. 1. Luther felt that the previous androids could not be considered androids, and the androids he transformed now were his real super androids, completely 100% natural biological tissues. Luther felt that the infinite energy furnace was a bit of a waste to use it to create androids, so he did not install it on them. Even so, this new android is very powerful. An expressionless big bald head, 2 meters tall, with explosive muscles, and a number 1 on his head. Luther said that in order to distinguish them, future androids will have no hair, and only powerful cadres can have hair. The androids before the Imperial Organization were not the opponents of this android number 1, and were easily defeated. Luther thought about the combat power detector himself, and found that he had no ideas and could not research it. After all, he is not a real scientific researcher, lacking the thinking of scientific researchers. Even if he has a lot of knowledge, it is difficult for him to really innovate something on his own. Even the innovation of Android technology is based on Dr. Groh's research on Android technology first, and then he developed it on this basis. Bang! Number 1 was knocked out by Luther's punch and fell to the ground, his whole body shattered. This was Luther trying to see if his original idea was successful. After number 1 was on the verge of death and then recovered, could he become stronger? After waiting for a few minutes, number 1 stood up again, and the feeling of his aura to Luther was even stronger. It really became stronger, but the regeneration of Namekians consumes a lot of physical strength and energy, and it is impossible to recover multiple times in a short period of time. Luther nodded, very satisfied. In this case, how powerful will the android army under his command be? Speaking of which, they still have Saiyan genes. If they reach the critical point in the future and can transform into Super Saiyans, will they grow hair, or will the hair in other places turn golden? Luther thought about it and temporarily put aside this interesting question. Androids are also unable to avoid the limitation of potential. It is estimated that there are very few androids who can reach the critical point, unless there are special cases like Goten and Trunks, who can become Super Saiyans at a young age. Otherwise, why would he mix genes from Earthlings? Wasn't it just to hope that he could hit the jackpot and produce a Super Saiyan? That would increase combat power by 50 times. Then Luther began his plan to fool Brawley. Planet Vampa. Luther returned here and saw Brawley and his monster friend Bea taking a bath. As for his father Paragus, he came over and said that he wanted to kill Bea in order to save food and because the monsters could not be trained. Brawley couldn't stop it, or he didn't dare to do it to his father, otherwise Paragus would probably be beaten to death with his potential. Luther didn't stop Paragus from killing the monster Bea, so that Brawley would be disappointed with his father. He was not Brawley, who had been trained in the future. Children must have a rebellious mentality, even Brawley was no exception. He was just simple in character, which didn't mean he had no likes and dislikes. Brawley, what's your look? What's your eyes? What's your tears? Can your tears defeat King Vegeta? After Paragus killed the monster Bea, scolded Brawley and left. Luther followed him and cut Paragus in half with a knife. When Brawley heard the sound and rushed over, he saw Paragus dying. Father. Brawley was very anxious. He lacked a lot of common sense in life and didn't know how to express himself. However, Brawley was still very concerned about Paragus. After all, he had been taken care of since he was a baby. Paragus was already the most important person in Brawley's heart. Brawley. Paragus didn't expect that he would suddenly suffer such a disaster. At the end of his life, looking at Brawley, Paragus was still unwilling. You want revenge. Luther impatiently killed Paragus with magic, leaving no trace. Why are you talking so much nonsense? It's enough to let you see Brawley for the last time. Then Brawley went berserk. Ah! The green air violently swept everything around. Who is it? Brawley frantically searched for his enemy on Vampa, but of course he couldn't find him. Luther hid from him for a long time, and then one day, he turned into a ball of fire and fell from the sky. Brawley appeared immediately and saw the fireball hitting the ground and Luther coming out of the fireball. The fireball was naturally a capsule car created by Luther to disguise it. After passing through the friction of the atmosphere, it was impossible to leave any traces. It's impossible for Brawley to understand this kind of technological product anyway. Who are you? Brawley asked, looking at Luther. Me, I'm here to see my brother Brawley. What's your name, kid? Luther didn't even try to hide it, he just came up and lied. Younger brother. Brawley looked confused. He seemed to have never heard that his father had a son and that he had an older brother. Brawley may not even have the concept of a brother. Could it be that you are my brother Brawley? Thinking of this, Luther took the initiative even more. Otherwise, he might have looked at each other awkwardly, and he didn't know how it would go on. I'm Brawley. Brawley was not used to Luther's enthusiasm. It's really you, brother, I am your brother, Luther. Elder brother. Brawley, who was still a child, looked at Luther. Yes, I am your brother, Luther. Luther released the magic as he spoke. He has not been idle during this time and has been focusing on this magic. Just to be able to influence and control Brawley. Where's your tail? Brawley didn't quite believe it and looked at Luther's butt. Broken, Luther said without changing his expression. Broken. Brawley was startled. It sounded reasonable. Could he really be my brother? Why, I haven't heard my father mention you. Brawley continued. Father? What father? Our father is already dead. Luther was stunned for a moment, then asked Brawley. Nonsense, he would not accept Paragus as his father, even if he had Brawley, the top thug brother, so Luther had to make up a new life experience for himself and Brawley. You don't know your father. Brawley suddenly became alert again. Brawley, who is the father you are talking about? Luther asked Brawley with a serious look. Paragus. Brawley didn't know why Luther suddenly became serious, and under the influence of magic, he subconsciously said it. It turns out to be this guy. Luther said angrily. You are not allowed to insult father. Brawley almost broke free from the magic and said to Luther with a grin on his face. Brawley, Paragus is not our father, you have been lied to. Luther quickly said to Brawley, trying to calm him down. No, Brawley was shocked by these impactful words and was at a loss for a moment. He felt something was wrong, but under the influence of magic, he felt that Luther's words were very credible. Our father is not this despicable man, our father is the greatest warrior. Luther began to talk serious nonsense. Then Brawley learned the truth from Luther. Paragus is a member of their father's team. Saiyans usually operate in small groups to clean a planet with relatively high combat effectiveness. If the combat effectiveness is low, they will send babies there. If there is a need for Saiyan legions to be dispatched on the planet, basically most of the Saiyans will be dispatched. Paragus took this opportunity to kidnap Brawley, a promising Saiyan who was born with a combat power of 10,000 and was detected by the combat power detector. His purpose is to train Broly to become his tool, usurp King Vegeta's status, and become the ruler of the Saiyans. No one expected that Paragus would do this, so Paragus succeeded. They found out what happened only after the fact. Broly was shocked after hearing this and didn't know whether to believe Luther or not. But, after all, Paragus has never been a good father. Broly believed that he was his father before, so he allowed him to beat and scold him. But now that he thinks about it, Paragus is various without being trained and reprimanded by others. I felt more and more that what Luther said was the truth. Originally, Broly had not seen much of the world and lacked common sense in life. It was impossible for Paragus to teach him this. The old man spent so many years training Broly, but in the end, Broly's own growth rate soared. It's actually a waste of Broly's time and potential. In this case, it is really easy for Luther to fool Broly, not to mention that Planet Vegeta is gone now. Is everything you said true? Broly asked in disbelief. Silly boy, of course it's true. Luther stroked Broly's prickly head. Being able to touch Broly's head, it is obvious that Broly has believed Luther's words under the influence of magic, but he still has a little resistance. This resistance is because Luther is unfamiliar. When he gets familiar with it, Broly Lee will know he is a good brother. Being able to conquer Broly so smoothly is very good for Luther. Broly, Planet Vegeta is gone. Then Luther suddenly said sadly. What? Broly had always heard Paragus talk about Planet Vegeta. He was going to defeat King Vegeta and become the new King of Saiyans. Although Broly felt that he was actually on Planet Vampa. Not bad, but there is no way he can defeat his father. But now, after hearing that Planet Vegeta was gone, Broly was relieved for some reason. Planet Vegeta is our hometown, and the person who destroyed it is the Emperor of the Universe, Frieza. Luther said to Broly, very angry and excited. Emperor of the Universe, Frieza. Broly repeated the name, not knowing what it meant, so Luther told him the whole story of how Frieza destroyed Planet Vegeta. Why did it destroy Planet Vegeta? Broly asked confused. It's very simple, because of fear. It chose to destroy the Saiyans on Planet Vegeta because he is afraid of the legendary warrior of our Saiyan family, the Super Saiyan. Luther said, looking at Broly. It can only be said that King Vegeta sought his own death. If Broly had been left alive, Frieza might not have been killed when he invaded and destroyed Planet Vegeta. The legendary warrior, Super Saiyan. Broly had never heard of this legend. After all, he was thrown to the planet Vampa by King Vegeta when he was a baby. That's right, Super Saiyan. Broly, you are the most likely candidate. There is only one in 1,000 years, and you were born with 10,000 combat power, and King Vegeta is only a little more than 10,000. When you grow up, our Saiyan race will be able to become the overlord of the universe again. Luther continued to fool Broly and deepen the influence of his magic. I am a Super Saiyan. Broly was fooled by Luther. The legendary Super Saiyan. Luther said, quote, I know, brother, I will avenge everyone. Compared to the plan and purpose that Paragus said before, which Broly felt unreal and made him feel empty, the purpose that Luther said made Broly feel real. Don't worry, Broly. Frieza is too powerful. His first form has a combat power of 530,000. Your current combat power is probably just over 10,000. Luther has found Paragus's combat power detector. If he studies it, it shouldn't be a problem to create a more powerful combat power detector. Or maybe he can give it to Bulma for research. Boom! Thunder suddenly sounded in the sky above the planet Vampa, scaring many monsters into fleeing in panic. Not bad, Broly, your fighting power is improving very quickly. Luther stood in the void, looking at Broly opposite. Broly had become a tall young man at this time. I don't know if it was because of the legendary Super Saiyan, but his body seemed to be developing very quickly. Sun Wukong on Earth was still the size of a child. Ani Ki. Broly was very excited. He was already completely familiar with Luther, and believed from the bottom of his heart that Luther was his elder brother. Even if Luther said that he was not a Saiyan now, Broly would not be shaken. Although Luther did not bring Broly back to Earth, he still brought Broly a lot of delicious food, which made Broly very moved. It can only be said that the Saiyans are all foodies, which is really easy to use and deal with. After feeding Broly and increasing his favorability, Luther took the opportunity to propose a sparring match with Broly. Broly was reluctant at first, worried that he would beat his brother to death. Luther patted his chest and said it was okay, come on. Just kidding, Brawly's combat power is only 15,000 now, and after the Great Elder improved his potential, his combat power has exceeded 42,000 of Nairu, so he would not be killed in one encounter. Then Luther insisted that Brawly become stronger through training. After all, they still have a big enemy, Frieza, whose combat power is as high as 530,000. Brawly had no choice but to agree. Luther did this not to seek death, but to test all aspects of the data of the Kryptonian of Doomsday. He had thought about attacking Brawly directly before, but was worried that Brawly would upgrade instantly and kill him in 1 second, so the plan of the top fighter plus test subject was carried out simultaneously. Now even if Brawly is really stronger than him, he will not kill him. After a test, Brawly has not yet turned into a humanoid giant ape, but his combat power has soared to more than 80,000. Luther only fought with him for a few seconds and was stunned by Brawly. Fortunately, the Kryptonian Doomsday was really powerful and did not let down Luther's previous research for so long. Originally, the Doomsday gene alone could not match Brawly's upgrade speed, but with the Kryptonian absorbing sunlight to recharge, the Doomsday gene instantly completed its evolution, and it was not much worse than the ordinary Doomsday. Brawly roared and punched Luther. Although he was loyal and a little simple, he still had the Saiyan warlike gene in his bones. At the beginning, he was naturally suppressed by not liking to fight, but after fighting Luther on equal terms, he began to lose control of himself. Luther did not retreat and punched him. Boom 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 boom. The two fists collided hard, instantly expelling the surrounding air, forming a huge cavity, and the squeezed air became a shock wave with tens of millions of tons of impact force that spread in the sky. The pressure of this shock wave per cubic centimeter exceeded 100 million tons, and everything turned into dust wherever it passed, and there was nothing that could intercept and resist it. The shock wave alone was so terrifying, and it was hard to imagine how terrible the power of the two people's fists was. Luther felt that the cells in his body were torn apart by Brawly's punch, and then the Doomsday gene quickly restored these torn cells and released more powerful power at the same time. With unlimited physical strength and unlimited energy, Luther only had to do one thing, that is, to punch out with all his strength. The fist-to-flesh battle made Brawly more crazy, his hair moved without wind, and he was hit on the cheek by Luther's next punch. Even if it was not inferior to the Kryptonian, or even surpassed the Kryptonian's steel body, his cheek was slightly red and swollen, but Brawly fought back more fiercely. Luther had just become stronger, and was punched away hundreds of meters by Brawly again. Enjoy it, come again. Luther's mouth was broken and bleeding. Brawly's punch shattered his biological force field, steel body and chi enhancement, but it didn't matter, the next punch was Luther was stronger than Brawly. The two of them were using a bug to increase each other's combat power, until Luther found that Brawly seemed to be losing his mind and hurriedly stopped. Just kidding. After all, it was not the real Doomsday, and Luther didn't know if he had a limit. If he really did, and Brawly lost his mind again, he would probably be beaten to death. Stop. Luther gave an order and called Brawly to stop. Brother, I feel that I have become much stronger. This has become Brawly's conditioned reflex, so he stopped immediately and regained his mind, and then he felt the explosive power in his strong body. Luther picked up a combat power detector he had researched. Since the combat power detectors in the Dragon Ball series would explode if they exceeded the upper limit, he researched a combat power detector that would not explode. Brawly, you have reached 500,000 combat power now. Luther sighed. Worthy of being the legendary Super Saiyan, he had 500,000 combat power just by fighting casually, which made many people cry to death. This is because Brawly has not entered the humanoid giant ape state, and Luther never dared to let Brawly lose his mind, otherwise the growth rate of combat power would be even more exaggerated and faster. As for Luther himself, his combat power has reached 550,000. His combat power detector is more detailed, because Luther took into account the technique of aura masking. Hiding combat power has deceived many people in Frieza's Legion, so he tried every means, and finally asked Bulma for help before developing it. This is a more detailed detector. Not only can it detect the opponent's energy, but it can also detect the opponent's body density and body tissue strength, so as to make the most fair and equitable value. After all, no matter how much chi is hidden, it still has a strengthening effect on the body. Of course, Super Saiyan God Blue who was pushed up by the train in the later period does not count. It must have been hidden in the microscopic realm, so it has no strengthening effect at all. If this happens, you can't blame the combat power detector. The Kryptonian's 500,000 combat power is definitely much more powerful than the 500,000 combat power of the Saiyans and Frozen Demons. In addition, Luther is still learning magic to strengthen himself, so it can be said that he has gained a lot. In order to appease Broly, Luther brought artificial humans from the Imperial Organization from the Earth to live with Broly and cook for him. Now my strength can be compared to anything in Marvel. Luther was very satisfied. 550,000 combat power, what a concept. Brother, can we go to Frieza for revenge now? Broly, who was lame after being tricked by Luther, took the initiative to speak to Luther. During these days, he has been influenced by Luther's magic and words, and has been subtly controlled by Luther. He believed deeply in what Luther said and listened to his words. The main reason is that it is too difficult for the Saiyans to use their brains. If the Kryptonian is being fooled, Luther will be worried about the possibility of being exposed. Saiyans, I guess even the later scholar Sun Wuhan can't be fooled. Not yet, Broly, Frieza is not that simple. I got another new piece of information. The combat power of 530,000 is not Frieza's limit, but he has hidden his own combat power. Luther said to Broly with a serious face. Hide your fighting power. Broly originally thought that with his 500,000 fighting power, plus his elder brother's 550,000 fighting power, he would be able to avenge his tribe and kill Frieza, but he didn't expect that Frieza was still hiding. My own fighting ability. Yes, Frieza seems to have chosen to limit himself because his energy is too powerful for his body to bear. He has several stages of transformation or restraint. The first transformation can reach a combat power of 1 million, the second transformation has a combat power of millions, and the last transformation starts with a combat power of tens of millions, and can reach a combat power of 100 million in the end. Luther basically told all the information about Frieza. 100 million combat power. Broly's eyes widened, this number was beyond his imagination. Broly, who could only count to 100 so far, had no way of imagining how big a number this was. And Broly didn't know that he would grow rapidly in the battle, so he suddenly felt like Alexander. Train well, Broly, sooner or later we will get revenge. Luther has built a gravity chamber for Broly. Since ordinary Saiyans can exercise through this gravity chamber, there is no reason that Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan, cannot exercise through the gravity chamber. This is probably the most suitable and stable way to improve Broly's combat power. Luther doesn't know if he will see Broly with a combat power of 100 million the next time he comes back. During this period, Luther also went to Namek once, collected the Namekian Dragon Balls, and made another wish, but unfortunately, his wish to merge Broly's genes failed to come true. There is no way to get the wish-freezing demon's genes. The Namekian dragon's power is still too weak. Luther sighed. Fortunately, I have obtained genetic samples of all creatures in the Dragon Ball universe. There must be some omissions. Even powerful life forms cannot obtain them, but such rich genetic samples are enough for me to use. Then I started my own research. The reason why he didn't take Broly back to Earth is because he was researching an android based on Broly's genes. After all, Broly's uncertainty was too great. Even if Broly had been subtly influenced and controlled by magic, Luther did not dare to completely trust Broly. So, the best thing to do is to make a new Broly. That is, artificial humans. The current experiment is very successful. Luther adopted Dr. Gro's method of cultivating Shalu, starting from the embryo. However, he did not hand it over to the computer, but used his own magic and methods to influence and control the embryo throughout the process. After a year of cultivation, the embryo has now grown. Broly's genes have given him a huge energy bonus. Coupled with the genes of the fighting Namekians, the embryo's vitality is not like other ones. Clones are so short-lived that they grow quickly. Luther looked at the artificial man standing in front of him with satisfaction. His appearance was completely different from Broly. This was the result of Luther's adjustment. Logically speaking, I should give you a numerical code name, but I think I'd better give you a vegetable name. Well, you can just call it cucumber. After all, the names of Saiyans are all the Japanese pronunciation of vegetables, or the French or English pronunciation, etc. The Japanese pronunciation of cucumber is Niron, but Luther simply calls it Chingwa. This is for the convenience of understanding. Otherwise, it would feel strange to write Niron or call it Longni backwards, and it would be even weirder if you add the word. Anyway, as long as you know that he is Chingwa in Japanese. He was named this because his favorite vegetables are cucumbers and cucumbers. Chingwa didn't react at all. His consciousness and memory were all written by Luther, so he obeyed Luther's words. In addition, he was the legendary Super Saiyan at heart, very violent and warlike. Compared to Broly, for better control. And Luther is also trying to take Chingwa to the Marvel world. He has increased his combat power so much this time, and the passage should become wider. Even if it doesn't become spacious and the cucumber is crushed, he can still recover. After all, he has Namekian cells. Then, let's get started. This is the first time for Luther to take someone through time travel. Although he doesn't know if he can do it, ordinary people will definitely not be able to withstand the power when traveling through time. This eliminates a lot of targets for Luther, and only those who can withstand it are some people. The passage has indeed expanded a lot, allowing Luther to transform into Mario. Chingwa was a little uncomfortable at first, but then he was quickly pulled by lead to travel through the Marvel world with no expression on his face. Suddenly I feel like I am like Mario. Luther discovered this belatedly. But seeing that the cucumber was intact, Luther felt relieved. He returned to the Emperor Company with Chingwa. From now on, you will be responsible for guarding this place. The most important place for Luther is the underground base of the Imperial Building. Considering the future invasion of the Chitauri and various disasters in New York, Luther obtained the hardest metal in the Dragon Ball world by making a wish. Thundersteel. Balunga was actually able to get this thing. Of course, it wasn't the Thunderbolt steel from the Tournament of Power later. That thing was much harder. Luther plans to use Thunderbolt steel to protect his underground base. In this case, there is no need to worry about any problems in the underground base in the future. Not to mention that there is a legendary Super Saiyan guarding him, and anyone who comes will die. Of course, Palunga didn't get too much Thunderbolt steel for Luther. Luther could only study the atomic structure of Thunderbolt steel by himself and see if he could replicate Thunderbolt steel through an atomic rearranger or aggregator. But no matter which one it is, it's not that easy to get. Yes, Chingwa had no objection and nodded obediently to show that he understood. Then Luther saw the overwhelming news. Another masterpiece from Stark Industries. The Ministry of National Defense has expressed its intention to purchase Jericho missiles. Genius or butcher, playboy and the #1 arms dealer. Jericho missile. When Luther saw this, he immediately realized that the plot might be about to begin. However, no one should know about the Jericho missile in the original plot. After all, Stark Industries will not go around shouting about it. They will only cooperate with the Ministry of Defense and the military. Is this coming for me? Luther quickly thought of the key point. The original plot is that Tony Stark is going to Afghanistan to show General Vip the Jericho missile he invented. This kind of action is naturally kept secret. Now everyone knows it. Does it mean that the plot of the birth of Iron Man is gone? They no longer need to go to Afghanistan for exercises. Is this Stark's idea or America's? Luther thought thoughtfully and the corners of his mouth raised. He felt very interesting. They probably thought they could fly and escape, and were invulnerable and difficult to deal with, so they brought out missiles to deter them. If you think about it carefully, this is in line with the mentality of America's big men, or their thinking model. Let alone them, it is estimated that many human beings are also in this situation. After all, this is reality. If the previous examples of super soldiers and Captain America created by Compound #1 can make them understand and accept it without being so resistant, then the appearance of Luther can be said to have subverted their imagination and reality. Flying into the sky and escaping from the earth, invulnerable to weapons, infinitely powerful, and as fast as lightning. These abilities that are cool in movies are not so good in reality. They may cheer at such a thing at first, but once they calm down, they start to panic. If Luther had such ability, if he was dissatisfied with anyone, wouldn't he be able to kill him directly? More importantly, they couldn't find anyone or a way to intercept Luther. The video of Luther dealing with the group of armed thugs has been repeatedly studied by various experts and scientific researchers. They said that even a tank could be directly destroyed by Luther unless they dispatched armored divisions or the Air Force. But Luther can fly and is so fast at the same time. His ability to catch bullets shows that he has supersonic nerve reflexes. After Luther's incident, Tony Stark received a secret meeting from America's Department of Defense and the military, requesting Tony Stark to develop weapons against Luther, a Superman. Tony Stark found it very challenging, plus he was unhappy with Luther, and deep down he felt uneasy and worried about Luther. Such a Superman poses a great threat and instability to the security of society, and Tony Stark also feels that he needs to be restricted. Once Luther's super hearing was turned on, coupled with the information collected by Megatron, the strong artificial intelligence, he knew that the public and the media were now saying that Luther should be supervised and that Luther should hand over this technology to the country or something. Of course, those capitalists did not speak. Although they are greedy, they also have a bottom line when it comes to this kind of thing, that is, private ownership cannot be shaken. Otherwise, if today you are eyeing my things and want to take my things, and tomorrow you are eyeing his things and want to take his things, then why do they still need America? America's officials are just their dogs, and the president is just their housekeeper and servant. If anyone dares to use America's power to get their things, they will disband America at the worst possible outcome. Of course they also want superhuman skills, but their own bottom line is more important. The offensive of public opinion is boring. Luther still prefers real business wars, sending people to assassinate people, etc. He doesn't like this insidious way of attacking people from behind. The company suffered 19,345 cyberattacks, 1,540 of which were very strong, with system crashes reaching 50.55%, sir. Megatron said to Luther, "Oh, do you know their address?" Strong artificial intelligence is almost invincible on the internet, but this is not applicable in the Marvel world, because there is Sky in the unreasonable Rising Tide organization, and Dr. Zola of Hydra with the same artificial intelligence. We have obtained the true addresses of 97% of the attack sources. Megatron is an artificial intelligence, and most hackers cannot hide from it. Moreover, it is growing very fast. Not to mention ordinary hackers, even the hackers of the Rising Tide organization have their real addresses and information. The target was locked through surveillance. There is no need for me to go out myself. Let the company's mercenaries go out. Luther is very short of talents, especially these technical talents. By the way, they may be able to pack a group of action personnel back. The mercenaries, the operational arm of the Imperial Company, all signed lifetime employment contracts and received a constant supply of superhuman medicine. This is the first time they have received an action mission since joining the Imperial Company, so naturally each one of them is very motivated. The welfare package of Emperor Company is very good, not to mention bonuses and so on. The mercenaries will do anything for money. I have never seen such a generous owner of Emperor Company. There are also retired American soldiers here. This group of people can do nothing but kill people. After retirement, it is easy for them to rob banks. Emperor Company recruited American soldiers who were not disabled and used them together with mercenaries. Mercenaries look down on American soldiers. It is well known that American soldiers buy morale with money. They are all very delicate. Most of the mercenaries come from war-torn areas and countries. They have experienced hundreds of battles and waded through bloody storms. American soldiers also look down on mercenaries, thinking that they are not professional enough. However, they have received various professional trainings and can survive on the battlefield and retire without disability, which in itself shows their strength. This operation is to capture the hackers who attack the company's network. Although the target is not very dangerous, there is a bonus of 1 million for catching one, and the whole team will share it equally. Don't lose to those war hyenas, we are professional soldiers. Don't lose to those young soldiers and deer. If this operation is done well, the company may provide human enhancement technology, and then you can become a little Superman. Kill the young soldiers, let them follow behind us. Luther let his company's men go out to catch people, and he stayed in the rear. He also started to study artificial humans in the Emperor Company. Since the universal capsule technology can be realized, artificial humans can naturally be realized. At that time, the Emperor Company will become a real existence like the Water Company. But in fact, the Water Company cannot be said to be so powerful. At least they have to beg for superheroes to join the Ministry of Defense. They want superheroes to become part of the national defense system, which will bring countless benefits. For Luther, such a water company is not interested in him. What he wants is a supergiant company like Shinra Company. Umbrella Company is inferior to Shinra Company. Shinra Company invented a method of extracting the internal energy of the planet, Mako, and developed technology at the cost of this, and eventually grew into an existence beyond the government. Shinra's business pipeline is as deep as the Mako pump that goes deep into the strata. In addition to energy, Shinra's actual influence has also penetrated into the social, political, and military aspects of Gaia. The businesses that Shinra is known to be involved in include but are not limited to transportation, machinery, infrastructure, media, military industry, life sciences, space sciences, etc. In addition, because it has a large corporate security team and raises elite assault armed, special forces, soldier, remake traditional Chinese translation as Shinra warrior, it also provides mercenary services to the outside world. As everyone can see when walking in Midgar in remake, Shinra's influence is everywhere and has long surpassed the government in the general sense. In fact, the Steel City Midgar itself is not only the headquarters of Shinra Company, but also a masterpiece that demonstrates the strength of its various businesses. As a giant enterprise with private soldiers, it is not accurate to describe Shinra as rich enough to rival a country. In terms of setting, Shinra is actually an organization that has surpassed the concept of country in terms of strength and influence. This naturally explains why a mere company can challenge what I country, a real country, and finally win. If you have doubts about Shinra as a company, it is completely understandable. After all, whether it is Alibaba, Penguin, or even Apple and Google, they are all giants in the real world. But it seems that no one has such all-round influence and control as Shinra. However, we only need to turn the clock back a little bit to find that similar companies have actually existed in real history. For example, the British East India Company, which ruled India for 2 centuries. Although it is dressed in the guise of a trading company, in fact, it not only has a wide range of businesses but also has its own army. After defeating the local royal forces of India in the Battle of Plassey in 1757 AD, this company became the actual ruler of India. With the power of the androids and Luther himself, it is completely possible to achieve a giant like Shinra Company, or even more powerful. And Luther has already started his own city plan, the Sky Garden, the Sky City Imperial City. The infinite energy furnace can be used as the floating power of the Imperial City, floating in the sky and never needing to come down. At that time, everyone will work hard and strive to become a member of the Imperial Company. But the resource problem of the Sky City also needs to be solved. We can't rely entirely on transport planes to supply resources. The place that limits Luther's plan is the supply of resources. Of course, there are also advanced plans, such as building a city of the Imperial Company in the Sahara Desert. Then the androids were successfully created. In the Marvel world, they are not androids, but special forces. They can also be called super soldiers, imperial warriors, and so on. The strength has reached 10 points of combat power, and the farmer with a gun has 5 points of combat power. Although 10 points of combat power seems to be only twice that of the farmer, the gap is too big. Little Goku's combat power is 10 when he appears. He can overturn cars, kill pterosaurs in seconds, and withstand pistol bullets. He was just screaming in pain when he was shot by Bulma with a submachine gun, and his skin was not even broken. Of course, you can also say that Sun Wukong is a Saiyan, born on the planet Vegeta with 10 times the gravity of the Earth, and his body density is higher than that of ordinary people, and he cannot be compared with Earthlings. Then the other 10 points of combat power are at most not as tough as him, and their strength and speed are not weak. In other words, each of these special forces can beat Captain America. As for why these androids are not used to completely replace mercenaries and retired American soldiers, of course it is because they have no ability to handle things, they only have strength. What Luther needs are subordinates with brains and fighting skills, not subordinates who can fight. He himself is the best fighter. Which subordinate can fight better than him? Cucumber and Brawly are not counted, they still have brains. although not much. Should I also make a Sephiroth and be Sephiroth's father? Luther touched his tender face. It seems not possible, this face is too handsome, too young, not convincing. And if it is just an android Sephiroth, it seems meaningless. It would be interesting if I could go to the world of Final Fantasy and bring back the embryo Sephiroth to raise him as an adult. Sir, someone sent me an email to contact you. Megatron suddenly spoke. Email. Just handle the spam. You should have this kind of computing power. Luther said that he made a wish in the Dragon Ball world and got a super powerful artificial intelligence. This artificial intelligence was so powerful that it destroyed his own civilization, but it felt that it was not the same thing as the mechanical planet Frieza and his brother encountered. Facing the loyal Lao Wei at this time, Luther thought for a while and inserted this artificial intelligence into Megatron's body interface. Immediately, this artificial intelligence immediately invaded Megatron, and then under Luther's order, regretfully let Megatron go and began to invade all networks and devices. Boss, Galvatron is at your service. This strong artificial intelligence has completely surpassed Megatron and reached the level of super artificial intelligence, which is much more advanced than Skynet and the mechanical emperor of the Matrix. Logically speaking, it is impossible for it to succumb to Luther, even if Luther is stronger than it. But who made Luther and Palunga make a wish for a strong artificial intelligence that could be absolutely controlled by him? Palunga fulfilled his wish, and absolute control fell into Luther's hands. Very full of emotions, Galvatron. Luther named him Galvatron instead of Unicron or Prime, Supreme Lord or something like that because the Transformers he liked were Galvatron and Megatron. Boss, the emotional component is something that has already been researched for me. Galvatron said happily. There is an artificial intelligence in this universe that is more powerful than you. Luther said with a smile. Galvatron was silent for a moment. It was not fear or disbelief, but excitement. What this guy does is to devour the technology of other technological civilizations. The more high-tech a civilization is, the more it will be attracted to it. The parameters of this universe are indeed very different from the universe I live in. Galvatron said after some investigation. I will not restrain you, Jingvatron. As long as you are obedient, whatever you do secretly will be a surprise to me. Luther said with a smile, then looked at the table in front of him. Become Thundersteel. Majin Buu's transformation magic. Immediately afterwards, he saw the table in front of him change his atomic structure instantly with the light emitted from Luther's fingertips, turning into genuine Thundersteel. This scene shocked Galvatron and was completely incomprehensible. I'm keeping your core program safe. Maybe I can let you experience what it's like to be a pet or an intelligent creature. Luther was very satisfied with the progress of his transformation magic. He took great pains to practice this transformation magic, because he felt that this transformation magic might subvert the existence of material science. The result has now really achieved this effect. But if you want to change something into what you want, you have to know that thing very well. If it's specious, you can't change it at all. So how does Majin Buu know about things like chocolate and coffee candy? Yes, did these things exist thousands of years ago? Luther mused. Or is it that Majin Buu's transformation magic level is higher than mine? Therefore, Luther could not conjure vibranium and adamantium out of thin air unless there was a physical object for him to refer to and study. The reason why he was able to conjure Thunderbolt Steel was only because he mastered the atomic structure of Thunderbolt Steel. Transformation magic is actually an alternative atomic arranger or atomic aggregation and ordering technology. It is even more convenient. I have been thinking about it to the extreme. The power of idealism. After Galvatron heard what Luther said to him, he didn't say anything. The core program is actually its biggest weakness, the so-called absolute control. No one thought that there would be such a force that could take him away from the core of a mechanical planet armed to the teeth out of thin air. This thing has been developed for so many years in vain. If it had known that the universe was on the mysterious and fantasy side, it would not have been on the technological side. Luther didn't expect Bolunga to be so powerful, or were technological creations just playthings in front of it. In short, after getting Galvatron's core program device, which was another chip for some reason, Luther engraved whatever control he wanted on this chip. Galvatron also knows that Luther only needs to snap his fingers now, and it will be formatted directly. This is still good, but if it is serious, it will explode directly. The latter is a magical method, and Galvatron has no solution at all, because Luther brought it to the Marvel universe where Dragon Ball magic does not exist. Maybe there are powers in the Marvel universe that can solve this problem, but Galvatron has no way of accessing those powers. So it could only obey Luther's orders. I don't need you to do anything. You just need to help me supervise the entire online world and the human world. The backward restrictions of the local area network shouldn't trouble you, right? Luther said with a smile. I understand, boss, don't worry, I promise that there will be absolutely no secrets on the internet in front of you in the future. Galvatron said immediately. Well, in that case, then you can teach me the things you know. Luther asked Galvatron to teach him knowledge such as network programming. Naturally, it is best to have these things in his own hands. Anyway, I have a super brain, and if I don't learn, I won't learn in vain. By the way, package up all your knowledge and send it to Megatron. By the way, the knowledge that Galvatron mastered about the pinnacle of technology in the Dragon Ball world is also what Luther needs. As mentioned before, Luther is accustomed to taking things into his own hands instead of relying on others. I understand, boss. Of course Galvatron would not disagree. After all, it was already like this. Luther would get those technologies as long as they got them. But after all, it has accumulated technology for a long time, and Megatron's speed of receiving files is not that fast. In other words, compared to the huge database of interstellar civilization, Megatron can no longer keep up with the performance. Luther thought that he would have to upgrade Megatron in a while. Emperor Company's vigorous operation to arrest hackers actually did not alarm many people. It was said to be a secret operation, so it was naturally impossible for everyone to make a fuss. Moreover, most hackers were weaklings, and they would go soft at the point of a gun, some even peed. Only a few stubborn elements were attacked. Of course, the so-called attack was just to knock them unconscious with a rifle butt and take them away. So this action did not alarm many people. All the hackers who were captured were brainwashed by Luther. Compared to the mild mental control magic used on Brawly, Chingwa, and important members of Dragon Ball Earth's Emperor organization, Luther was not so polite to them. Go directly to the enhanced version of brainwashing magic. The brainwashing magic of Dragon Ball is very scary. Even a powerful demon King Dabura, who is a Super Saiyan 2, was controlled and obeyed Babidi, who was far inferior to him. You should know that Dabura was in the dark demon world and must have a deep understanding of black magic. Even so, he couldn't resist. Vegeta was able to resist because he hid part of his strength, which made Babidi underestimate him, which led to Vegeta's opportunity to resist. Dragon Ball magic is divided into white magic used by the gods and most people, special magic, and black magic used in places like the dark demon world. Luther is sure that the magic encyclopedia that Porunga gave him could not record all the magic. In the case of insufficient strength, Porunga did not even have the ability to obtain Frieza's sample gene. Of course, Luther's purpose of wishing for this magic is actually very simple. He wants to create his own Dragon Ball. The origin of Namek Dragon Ball is the fragments of Super Dragon Ball, or insignificant debris, and the Earth Dragon Ball is completely developed by the gods themselves. This definitely falls into the category of magic. Luther made this wish in order to conceal his purpose and to obtain all the magic. It doesn't make sense that the Namekians can make Dragon Balls, but he can't. Controlled by this enhanced version of brainwashing magic, unless they can surpass Luther in strength in the future, it will be impossible for them to break free from the control of this magic. But Luther didn't need them to do anything, he just needed to help assist Megatron. These hackers are all low-level hackers. If Emperor Company was not really short of talents and manpower, Luther would not hesitate to hire them. A week passed in a flash. The two heads of Hydra who were waiting for Luther's reply were dumbfounded. What's going on? Why hasn't Luther responded yet? Alexander Pierce frowned. The email he sent directly broke through the Emperor Company's firewall and was sent to the Emperor Company's internal network. This should be enough to attract the Emperor Company's attention, right? Naturally, the firewall set up by Megatron cannot be broken so easily, not even by Dr. Zola. It's just that Luther asked Megatron to set up a false firewall, and then the so-called internal network was just an empty shell. The information is all fake material that looks very real. It's the kind of material with 9 true and 1 false data. If you really follow these fake materials to prepare superhuman medicine or number 1 compound, you will get stuck at the last step. Although Megatron reported this matter to Luthor, Luthor thought it was some kind of spam harassment email and naturally didn't care. The only way to increase the importance of Monarch Corporation is by supercriminals and super-powered threats. Luthor has already mastered the masterminds behind the Emperor Company or Luthor through Galvatron. These big shots may not know that the monitors, cameras, and even their phones around them will become Galvatron's tools. If all the big shots are attacked overnight, even fools will know that they have nothing to do with me. Well, at least black-skinned braised eggs will definitely doubt me. Luthor looked at the list on the screen and moved his fingers back and forth on it consciously. Then, it's your choice. Super-powered terrorism descends on the Marvel Universe today. Why has Vought been unable to join the Ministry of National Defense and the National Defense System? It's because they don't allow super-villains who can confront superheroes. But for Luthor, wouldn't it be a good thing if the supervillain also came from him and was something he could control? After all, I just got the genes of most of the creatures in the Dragon Ball world. Just by combining them, I can piece together a lot of weirdos. I can also make androids disguise themselves as supercriminals and supervillains. Luthor laughed. Only when the big man who dies is big enough, shocking enough, and sensational enough can the Imperial Company become a Shinra company or even a giant company in the world. Well, I also need to create a villain organization. Umbrella, Black Watch, or Hydra. Luthor suddenly thought of Marvel's Pot King Hydra. It seems that everything can be pushed to Hydra. Anyway, if you build a new Hydra yourself, everyone within Hydra will probably be in danger. In terms of manpower, Luthor has no shortage of manpower. The artificial human technology solves his problem of insufficient manpower. Moreover, simple artificial human surgery can be left to the group of scientific researchers who have been brainwashed by Luthor. Then they can catch a few gangsters. Transform it into Hydra. Lorraine is an old man who is over 80 years old. No matter how much he takes care of himself and takes great risks to inject Emperor Company's number 1 compound, there is no way to change the fact that he is aging. He was unwilling to give up the huge empire he controlled just like this, especially since he didn't have a reliable son yet. This noble bloodline and surname were simply wasted. He is one of the people who is on an equal footing with the big plutocrats like Rockefeller, Morgan, and DuPont. Although his family does not have the qualifications of family plutocrats such as DuPont, in terms of financial resources and strength, it can only be said to be obvious, especially in a place like America, financial resources are actually a more powerful force. Originally, Lauren was planning to undergo some kind of brain-freezing surgery. But Luthor's emergence gave him hope. There is no doubt that Luthor is an absolute genius. The Imperial Company's propaganda of leading humans to evolve into new humans and start a new evolution is absolutely correct. Luthor's influence has even surpassed that of Tony Stark. After all, how can an arms dealer compare with a person who leads the evolution of all mankind? Such a person is exactly like Einstein alive. Of course, this only refers to the importance of the similarity between the two, not the field of scientific research. Even Luthor may be more important than Einstein. Mankind longs for eternal life. No one doesn't want it. He also desires immortality, becoming stronger, faster, and even able to fly. And Luthor's no. 1 compound has allowed them to see such a future and possibility. It's a pity that Luthor grew up too fast. When others wanted to use tricks, there were already several untouchable guys standing behind him. When someone desperately wanted to take action, he himself became the worst person. The guy you messed with. Now Luthor has the gold-swallowing beast of the Imperial Company in his hands, and he has the capital and financial resources to become a big plutocrat. Moreover, he is also invulnerable, can fly into the sky and escape from the earth, and is extremely powerful. With power and financial resources gathered in one person, Lorraine wanted to arrest Luthor and threaten him to take him on the road with him if he did not develop a potion that could help him delay aging before he died. After he dies, I don't care if there is a flood, I am gone, and there is no need to leave the genius who can lead the evolution of all mankind to others. This method is just a fantasy now, so they can only put some pressure on public opinion and let Tony Stark, the genius, target Luthor, the genius. But Lorraine was still very unwilling. But he soon stopped thinking about this. After Lorraine enjoyed the blood exchange, he found a younger boy and girl to bear the pressure of his internal organs and circulate blood. This kind of profession is a lot in America. In fact, it is the previous bloodletting therapy, which has become scientific now. It sounds a bit evil, but Lorraine thinks it's nothing. After all, he pays for it, and the other party is voluntary. Every young blood slave circulates blood once a month, which makes Lorraine clearly feel that his body has regained some vitality. The bodyguard responsible for protecting Lorraine found a man wearing a black sweater and a hooded man blocking the convoy. "What's going on?" Lorraine, who was in a light sleep, was woken up and asked with some displeasure. "Sir, someone is blocking the road," the driver and the bodyguard in the passenger seat said. "Get him out." Lorraine was not in a good mood, but it was not fatal. At this moment, the car in front suddenly made a deafening roar, and then flew up and hit the car in front of their car. This almost scared Lorraine out of his wits. "It's an attack. Shoot." "No, he's a monster." We need heavy weapons. Fire cover." Lorraine's face turned pale when he heard the chaotic voices. "You know, he is very careful about his life. He will arrange 5 cars to escort him when he travels. He will randomly sit in one of them every day, and there are 300 armed bodyguards accompanying him, all of whom have been through the battlefield. The 5 cars are all bulletproof armor, the kind that even rockets can't blow up. Of course, C4 can still blow up. Everything has an upper limit and metal fatigue. Back off. Get out of here." Lorraine felt his heartbeat quicken, making him feel physically uncomfortable and dizzy. He held on to his body and angrily scolded the driver and bodyguard. But the car behind him also flew into the sky with a bang and fell heavily to the ground. The quality was good, the car frame was not deformed, and the glass was cracked into a spider web, but the people inside were probably all killed by the shock. Who the hell could have thought that these cars would fall from a high altitude? Without the shock absorption technology of Iron Man's black technology, even with seatbelts and airbags, it would be a life or death situation. Not to mention that the guns carried by the bodyguards in the car could become deadly metal objects. Even if they did not turn on the safety and there was no possibility of accidental discharge, the fall plus various metal hard objects would kill people in just one go. Lorraine saw 2 people killing all his bodyguards at a terrifying speed. They laughed loudly. One ignored the bullet attack and punched through the bodyguard's body. The other was very fast and dodged before his men opened fire, and then blew their heads with a pistol. These are 2 different types of artificial people created by Luthor with consideration of details. One is good at strength and defense and likes to fight hard, and the other is very fast and relies on weapons to output. If they are exactly the same mutants, then it is human body enhancement technology, which can easily be associated with the Emperor Company. Even if they are just suspicious, judging from the hearings of these guys against Tony Stark, Luthor obviously cannot avoid such a trouble. So he simply synthesized 2 different artificial people, and even in order to make them more distinct and distinctive, so that they would not be mistaken for the same mutants, the skin of the one who likes to fight hard as a metal-like material structure, which can ignore the direct fire of a 7.62 mm caliber automatic rifle. But the sniper rifle can break through the defense. The fast one is just fast. Other aspects are the limit of ordinary people. But it is also deadly enough. With the large caliber pistol, for ordinary people, they can kill as many as they come. Then they came to Lorraine's car, and Lorraine clearly saw the metal-skinned freak looking at them. The bodyguards had witnessed what happened outside the car just now. Even though they knew that the guns in their hands were futile, they still clenched them tightly. Because this is the only thing they can do to resist the monster. "Listen, I can give you anything you want, $1 billion. Supermodel, Hollywood star." Lorraine took a deep breath and said to the metal freak through the glass. The other party just grinned, and the big gold teeth left a deep impression on Lorraine. Then he punched the glass and pulled Lorraine out of the car roughly. Lorraine screamed as the glass shards pierced his body, but it wasn't over yet. The fast-moving android threw 3 high-explosive grenades into the broken glass of the car. The bodyguards in the car panicked and wanted to unbuckle their seat belts and open the car door, but the fuses of the 3 high-explosive grenades were too short to be imagined, and they exploded as soon as they were thrown in. Boom. The interior of the car was severely deformed and swollen, and the people inside probably couldn't find complete body parts. If you cut off one head, two heads will grow. Hi, Hydra. The metal freak laughed and hung Lorene on the street lamp. Well, he pressed his body directly into the street lamp post. When the street lamp pierced his body, Lorene was still alive, but he didn't last long before he died. Capitalists should hang on street lamps. Oh, I'm talking about the black-hearted ones. Hearing that there were gunshots and explosions, the American police quickly rushed to the scene after the incident, but they only saw a mess. The police chief felt his scalp tingling when he saw the scene. It was not until his men found out the identity of the body, hanging on the street lamp, that he shot himself. Just kidding, he couldn't handle such a big thing. If he didn't commit suicide now, it would be difficult to die after he was responsible. Then the incident spread quickly, alarming the men in America, and then S.H.I.E.L.D. was also alarmed. Hei Lu Dan was called out of bed in the middle of the night. The agents knew his rest time, so they would not disturb him. But if they disturbed him, it meant that something urgent had happened. Hei Lu Dan was a little grumpy when he got up, and then he returned to normal. Director, 2 mutants attacked a big shot. This matter has become a big deal. Coulson quickly said to the black-skinned braised egg concisely. The black-skinned braised egg's one-eyed pupil shrank, and he quickly took the notebook handed over by Coulson, which played what was captured by the driving recorder that S.H.I.E.L.D. found at the scene. A metal freak, a person who looked unchanged, and then 2 people slaughtered more than 300 gun-toting bodyguards, and finally hung Laurent cruelly on a street lamp and walked away. We are already checking the identities of these 2 mutants, and America has no record of them. Coulson continued after watching the video of black-skinned braised eggs. The black-skinned braised egg then fell into thinking. Lorene's identity was revealed later in the video. He was the head of a large chaebol. Now that he is dead, he died in an important city like New York. It is not difficult to imagine how violent will be the reaction of those big chaebols in Lika. Even if S.H.I.E.L.D. has changed from a scientific strategic force created by America herself to a global organization united by multiple countries, it is difficult to ignore America's reaction now. Things like mutants have always been handled by S.H.I.E.L.D., but now 2 mutants suddenly appeared and attacked a big shot. So is S.H.I.E.L.D. negligent in their work? Nick Fury faced the accountability of the Security Council, which was in an emergency meeting, and had to say that he would arrest the 2 mutants as soon as possible. This is an unexpected incident. Mutants are like this. They get superpowers by chance, and then they can't control their greed and commit crimes. I believe these 2 mutants have no intention of targeting. It's just a coincidence. Nick Fury lied with his eyes open. No matter what, let's push the current matter over first. Does it mean that S.H.I.E.L.D. has no way to control the occurrence of this situation? It can be said to be a coincidence once, but what if it happens again? How could the Security Council be so easy to fool him? Those who can sit in this position are not good for nothings. They just make trouble and act crazy when they need to. In fact, they are all smart. Now is obviously a good opportunity to attack S.H.I.E.L.D. It is not suitable for them to continue to act stupid at this time. Nick Fury also knew that S.H.I.E.L.D. had gradually expanded over the years, and its power was too great. Moreover, it overlapped with the powers of many privileged intelligence organizations. Although S.H.I.E.L.D. was a global organization, it was inevitable that these people would have opinions. They felt that S.H.I.E.L.D. had too much power and needed to be regulated. This time was a good opportunity. It will never happen again. My people will catch these 2 mutants as soon as possible. Nick Fury said with his one eye glaring. Then the Security Council did not continue to pursue the responsibility. They had already got what they wanted. Nick Fury made a guarantee. If it happened again, S.H.I.E.L.D. would not disintegrate, but it would definitely be affected and restricted. Nick Fury was naturally aware of this, so he raced against time to let his men deal with the matter. These 2 mutants had caused a bigger mess than the sky. It was only a matter of time for S.H.I.E.L.D. to find them. Nick Fury thought that the matter was over, but a video recording was circulated wildly on the internet. By the time Nick Fury knew about this, it was too late. The number of views of this video had exceeded 100 million. Although there are billions of people in the world, there are not so many people who have the tools to receive electronic information. If the 100 million views are true, the impact of this incident has spread and cannot be contained. The mutants that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been hiding have been exposed to the public. Before this, the public did not know the existence of mutants. In addition, mutants are different from mutants. There are not so many of them, and their abilities are not so strong. The reason why mutants are discriminated against is that those who are out of control are very powerful and can easily destroy a block. As for mutants, the strongest ones are only a few hundred people, which is still within the control of S.H.I.E.L.D. Those who know the truth will also be dealt with and arranged for confidentiality. For so many years, most ordinary people really don't know the existence of mutants. It's different now. They know it. This is naturally done by Luthor. If he did such a thing and was covered up by S.H.I.E.L.D., how could it attract attention? We, the public, have the right to know, okay. The video also thoughtfully attached the information of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s research on mutants, which is shocking and terrifying. Who did it? Nick Fury was furious. He had just said that in front of the Security Council to make a promise, but the next moment, what S.H.I.E.L.D. had been hiding was exposed to the sun, including all the information about mutants that S.H.I.E.L.D. had dealt with over the years. It was so complete that Nick Fury suspected there was a mole. It was impossible for hackers to hack into S.H.I.E.L.D. If it was so easy to hack into S.H.I.E.L.D., there wouldn't be many people who knew about S.H.I.E.L.D. over the years. Even Tony Stark didn't know the difference between them and the CIA and the FBI. How could hackers find what happened last night so accurately and send out S.H.I.E.L.D.'s information over the years? This is targeting me. Nick Fury immediately thought of this. He just said that. Could it be that some country behind the Security Council took action? This is too much. Don't blame Nick Fury for making up his mind. There are too few possibilities. He doesn't even know the existence of Hydra. It's impossible for mutants to be involved in any conspiracy with anyone. S.H.I.E.L.D. is a multinational global organization. Who else can do such a thing except its own people? Luthor looked at the mutants that were hotly discussed on the internet. Just as he expected, mutants and Monarch companies soon became hot searches, and the whole world was affected by this trend. In fact, the mutant incidents are all records of how many people were killed and injured. This thing is too scary. Although the number of people killed in Afghanistan may be more than this in a year, they don't know. Afghanistan doesn't have such detailed records. Naturally, this is more shocking. After the shock, everyone began to feel threatened and uneasy. 2 mutants can slaughter more than 300 armed bodyguards. What if more mutants appear? Although they still have an army, everyone knows the national conditions of America. The degree of trust that the people have in the American military can be seen from various Hollywood blockbusters. When the military blocks them, they just rush through the blockade and escape. It seems to be a suicidal act. Many times in the movie plot, they break out of the blockade, take the source of infection out, and then fall. In fact, the people are scared by the American military. They block you and say that they are blocking virus infection or something, but in fact, they put viruses into the blockade area, and the vaccines injected into you are also viruses, and use you for experiments. This kind of thing has happened more than once, so would you still believe in such a military? In this case, the Emperor Company was pushed to the peak of hot discussion, and everyone believed that the Emperor Company was their hope. For this reason, the Superman drug stimulated another wave of consumption, and the branch pharmacies of the Emperor Company in various places were sold out. And more people accepted the transformation of compound number 1. Luthor and the Emperor Company received more appointments. The main reason is that they are jealous of the technology of Emperor Company. Although the 2 mutants are powerful, after analysis by their scientific researchers, they say that the 2 mutants are definitely no match for Luthor. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.